Chapter 1566. Chu Fengmian pondered while paying attention to his surroundings. He had already discovered that the darkness around him had already disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by a screen of light. Chu Fengmian tentatively reached out his hand to touch it, only to discover that the other side of the light curtain led to another place. Could it be that I've completed the test of the bridge here? The other side of the light screen should be the place where the treasure is and I can get the reward. Chu Fengmian observed for a while and suddenly gathered his spiritual consciousness and penetrated it. The light screen was not only able to block sight, but also spiritual consciousness. It was as if someone had drawn an array to block it. However, the array had been there for countless years and its power was not even 1/10 of its original. Chu Fengmian activated his spiritual consciousness and penetrated the light screen. Behind the light screen was a palace. Inside the palace, there was a dazzling array of sacred elixirs and sacred elixirs. Behind each light screen, there were different treasures. However, behind the light curtain was an enormous formation, which separated the light curtain from the bridge. As long as one could pass through the light screen, he could enter the palace and get the treasure. However, if they did that, then the cultivators who entered the light screen would not have a second chance to enter the bridge. This was a choice. He could enter and get the treasure. However, once he got the treasure, he could not go any further and could only leave the large treasure. Everyone only had one chance to get the treasure. Chu Fengmian was not surprised when he saw this. Generally, in such a large treasure, not only one person could get the treasure. Although the most important and precious treasure would definitely belong to one person, the other cultivators who entered would still have a chance to get a share of the soup. For example, in the 9 mystic celestial sovereigns' cave, as long as one passed the level in the martial pagoda, one could get the corresponding reward. However, the real treasure of the 9 mystic celestial sovereign could only be obtained by those who passed the 21st level of the martial pagoda. Now, Chu Fengmian only needed to move his body to pass through the light screen and obtain the treasure. However, Chu Fengmian's target was the treasure in the deepest part of the large treasure trove. Although these treasures were good, Chu Fengmian was still far from reaching the end. If a martial artist came here and didn't have the strength to take another step forward, then it would be a good idea to collect a portion of the treasures. However, it wasn't that easy to collect these treasures. Even Emperor Gu, who was at the peak of the 8th tribulation, wouldn't be able to set foot in Chu Fengmian's vicinity. Only the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu had the confidence to step into this place. Without strength, even if a cultivator came to this large treasure trove, they would only end up empty-handed. Therefore, this kind of large-scale treasure trove had always relied on luck and strength. Neither could be missing. Entering it was luck, but in order to obtain the treasure, one had to rely on strength in the end. Chu Fengmian's escape light continued to travel through the bridge. Pieces of light screens were left behind by Chu Fengmian. Many of the treasures behind these light screens were enough to make many 9 tribulations Emperor Gu go crazy. If a 9 tribulations Emperor Gu obtained one of these treasures, it would be enough to increase his strength by 20 to 30%. It was definitely a supreme treasure. Obtaining one of these supreme treasures was enough to match a 9 tribulations Emperor Gu's hundreds to thousands of years of cultivation. However, Chu Fengmian ignored them completely and didn't care at all. His target was only the treasure trove at the end of this bridge. 5,000 miles. It took him 4 to 6 hours to move forward another 2,000 miles. In front of Chu Fengmian, another illusory palace slowly appeared. Chu Fengmian approached step by step, and the palace finally solidified. The palace in front of him was exactly the same as the 2 palaces Chu Fengmian saw before. The restrictions on it were also badly decayed. Chu Fengmian was already familiar with this. A stream of spiritual energy condensed in Chu Fengmian's palm, and he immediately struck it with his palm. Boom! The closed door of the palace was shattered on the spot, and the treasure inside the palace was revealed. Only this time, it was neither a heavenly wonder nor a material, but an ancient book. A martial technique? Chu Fengmian's eyes lit up. He didn't lack spiritual weapons now. What was most useful to Chu Fengmian now wasn't a heavenly wonder like the branch of the creation tree, nor was it a divine elixir used to increase his strength, but a sword technique. The most important part of Chu Fengmian's strength was the 9-region sword technique that he created himself. If Chu Fengmian obtained a powerful sword technique and integrated it into the 9-region sword technique, his strength would also increase crazily. Especially in this large treasure trove, the treasures left behind were all supreme treasures that were of great use to the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. A sword technique left behind by an expert of this level was absolutely extraordinary. If this martial technique was a sword technique, it would be of great use to Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian looked forward to it as he took a step forward and grabbed the ancient book. There was still a remnant of spiritual energy on the ancient book. Sensing that Chu Fengmian wanted to grab it, the spiritual energy suddenly emerged and turned into a barrier, ready to stop Chu Fengmian. You want to resist with an ancient book? Chu Fengmian's eyes turned cold and his face became angry. A dragon's power shrouded down. After Chu Fengmian condensed all 129,600 drops of ancient war dragon bloodline, the dragon's power in his body was now extremely pure. In particular, Chu Fengmian still had the bloodline of the ancestor of all dragons, Jianwang. The dragon's power in his body was more terrifying than the dragon's power of a real ancient war dragon. Under the suppression, the layer of spiritual energy that emerged on the ancient book was shattered on the spot. Immediately, Chu Fengmian reached out and the ancient book fell into the palm of his hand. As Chu Fengmian grasped the ancient book in his hand, he could feel the pure martial intent within it. It's not a sword technique. Feeling the martial intent, Chu Fengmian shook his head with slight disappointment. Since it was a martial intent and not a sword technique, this ancient book was most likely a fist technique manual. For Chu Fengmian, it was not very useful. However, he still opened the ancient book. The moment he opened the ancient book, the martial intent suddenly turned into a lion and soared into the sky. This power was extremely tyrannical. Chapter 1567. Its aura alone was comparable to that of a peak 8 tribulation Emperor Gu. Just by opening the ancient book, it already possessed such a terrifying aura. Moreover, this was an ancient book. After the passage of time, the power contained in it had already been reduced by more than half. The lion was like a beast that had been suppressed in the ancient book. As the ancient book was opened, the seal was undone and it soared into the sky, trying to escape. Trying to escape? Chu Fengmian could tell that the lion was a part of the ancient book. However, for some reason, it had taken form and was trying to escape. The lion was still formed by its aura. However, if it was given a few thousand years, it might really become a real lion and turn into a living creature. Chu Fengmian let out a cold roar. He gathered the power of the battle dragon bloodline in his palm and executed the first form of the primogenitor ancestor. The lion was shattered into pieces after receiving the power of the palm. It gradually turned into 4 words and fell into the ancient book. The lion whose strength was comparable to the peak 8 tribulation Emperor Gu was formed by 4 words. Chu Fengmian's eyes were filled with astonishment. He originally thought that this lion should be an existence similar to the soul of some demonic beast sealed in this ancient book. He did not expect it to be formed by 4 words. The ancient books did have records of characters taking form. It was said that there was once an expert known as the art saint. That person would draw with his hands. Before the ink was dry, the image in the painting would appear and take the shape of a figure. Some ancient paintings also had records of the scroll turning into a beast. He did not expect the words in the ancient book to be able to take form. The lion that had just run out was close to becoming a beast. Chu Fengmian glanced at the ancient book in astonishment. The lion formed by the 4 words lost its power after being shattered by Chu Fengmian. It fell into the ancient book and immediately appeared. The 4 words, Lion Tyrant of the Boundless. They appeared on the first page of the ancient book. The 4 words were extremely ancient words of the 9 domains. They were at least a few 100,000 years old. Fortunately, Chu Fengmian was familiar with the ancient books of the 9 domains. Lion Tyrant Boundless. Could this be the tyrannical lion martial ancestor's cave? Chu Fengmian recalled these words in his mind. Suddenly, a name appeared in his mind. Martial Progenitor Tyrant Lion. Martial Progenitor Tyrannical Lion, a legend among the 9 domain beast gods, was said to be an ordinary lion progenitor. Later on, with a shocking comprehension, he created the lion ancestor's martial Tao, and was known as the martial ancestor. The title of martial ancestor was something that only martial cultivators who had reached the great mastery of the martial way were qualified to be called martial ancestors. On the other hand, the god beast did not belong to this category. However, the martial path that the tyrannical lion progenitor had created had reached the peak, surpassing countless martial highnesses. Thus, no one dared to refute his title of martial ancestor. He was the only martial ancestor among the monstrous immortals. The boundless lion tyrant, it's indeed the martial path of the tyrannical lion progenitor. Chu Fengmian flipped open the ancient book. As Chu Fengmian had guessed, it was the martial path of the tyrannical lion progenitor. Even though the tyrannical lion progenitor was a beast god, he did not belong to any tribe. He was alone. Even though he had inherited a part of his martial path, it was not complete. As a result, it gradually declined. Chu Fengmian did not expect to find the complete martial path of the tyrannical lion progenitor in the cave. If a martial highness obtained this ancient book, they would definitely soar into the sky. Even if they were a nobody, it would be enough to become a peerless expert. The tyrannical lion progenitor had once been a heavenly being. This ancient book recorded the martial path of the tyrannical lion progenitor throughout his life. If a 9 tribulations Emperor Gu obtained it, it would be enough to double his strength as an Emperor Gu. Among the countless martial skills recorded by the 4 great forces in the Daluo star field, there was not a single book that could be compared to the boundless lion tyrant before him. The boundless lion tyrant, these 4 words represented how invincible the tyrannical lion progenitor was in that era. However, Chu Fengmian sighed. This ancient book was of no use to him. What Chu Fengmian wanted to cultivate was not the martial path of any one person. Chu Fengmian did not even want to cultivate the sword Tao of the master of the sword Tao. What he wanted to do was to create his own sword Tao. A sword Tao that surpassed everything in the world. The boundless lion tyrant did not mean much to Chu Fengmian, as he would never abandon the sword Tao to learn the martial path of the tyrannical lion progenitor. However, all the martial arts in the world originated from the same source. The boundless lion tyrant recorded the martial path of the tyrannical lion progenitor, as well as his invincible aura. As long as Chu Fengmian carefully studied it, he would be able to comprehend some of the intents and integrate them into his own sword Tao. He might even be able to create a new sword Tao, just like how Chu Fengmian had created the 9 mysterious sword Tao with the 9 mysterious immortal art. However, comprehending it was not something that could be done in a short period of time. Chu Fengmian placed a few restrictions on the boundless lion tyrant to seal off its power. His figure flickered as he flew deeper into the bridge. Chu Fengmian was overjoyed after learning the origin of the cave abode. The tyrannical lion progenitor had once dominated the 9 realms. Besides, compared to a faction, the tyrannical lion progenitor might have left more treasures behind. After all, even though the Cloud Feather Heaven Palace and the Heavenly Yuan Chamber of Commerce had left quite a number of treasures behind, they were not as glorious as the tyrannical lion progenitor. The reason being that a faction would nurture countless disciples and distribute the sacred herbs and sacred pills they collected instead of hiding them. Even though there were many treasures, they would also consume a lot of them, thus not many of them would be left behind. However, the cave abode of the 9 mysterious immortal highness and the cave abode of the tyrannical lion progenitor were different. They were all on their own without any factions. The treasures they collected would be left behind in the cave abodes after their deaths. The treasures inside the cave abode of the tyrannical lion progenitor were most likely more valuable than the treasures inside the ruins of a faction. The creation tree branch, the purple star rock, and the ancient book of the boundless lion tyrant were only the tip of the iceberg. The real treasures were still inside the cave. Chu Fengmian's figure flickered continuously. However, after reaching 5,000 li, Chu Fengmian's speed slowed down significantly. The pressure that Chu Fengmian was under was so great that even the peak 8 tribulations Emperor Gu could not move. He could not even take a step forward. Even the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu could not move under the pressure. He could only walk with his feet. Chapter 1568. Even Chu Fengmian's escape light was extremely slow. It was almost the speed of an expert in the divine power realm or even the wind-controlling realm. It consumed a lot of spiritual energy for every mile he advanced. It took Chu Fengmian another 4 to 5 hours to cover the distance of 6,000 miles. The pressure on the bridge increased sharply for every 1,000 miles he passed. After reaching 6,000 miles, the pressure on Chu Fengmian's body made it impossible for him to activate his escape light. Chu Fengmian felt that he had reached the depths of the cave. He should not be far from the end of the bridge. Chu Fengmian heard the lion's roar coming from the depths of the cave. "Let's go!" Unable to fly, Chu Fengmian landed and activated his movement technique, running toward the depths of the bridge. Even under such great pressure, Chu Fengmian's speed was still not fast enough. Chu Fengmian activated the phantom movement technique to the extreme, creating a shadow with every step. It was hard to tell which one was the real Chu Fengmian. With Chu Fengmian's current strength, he had already cultivated the phantom movement technique to the extreme. He moved several miles with every step. The surrounding light curtain had become extremely rare. There was only one light curtain that appeared about 100 miles away. However, Chu Fengmian used his spiritual consciousness to see through the light curtain. He could see the treasures placed within. Black dragon wood, galactic sand, and countless heaven-grade spiritual weapons were placed within. Not only the 9 Tribulations ancient emperors, but even the half-step celestial being experts would go crazy if they saw the treasures and wanted to obtain them. How many treasures did the tyrannical lion martial ancestor obtain? Chu Fengmian saw the countless treasures in the light curtain along the way. It was definitely more than the treasures in the 9 mystic immortal venerables cave. However, Chu Fengmian completely ignored the treasures in the light curtain. His goal was the end of the bridge. Chu Fengmian did not care about these. 100 miles, 200 miles. For Emperor Gu, it was a distance that could be crossed in the blink of an eye. However, it was extremely difficult for him to cross the bridge. With every step forward, not only did he have to bear a huge amount of pressure, but he also had to consume a huge amount of spiritual energy. Even if a 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu came, he would not be able to take more than a few steps. He would have to sit down and rest to recover his spiritual energy. On the other hand, Chu Fengmian relied on his holy veins to continuously absorb spiritual energy and restore his spiritual energy. However, gradually, Chu Fengmian felt that his spiritual energy was running out. On this bridge, Chu Fengmian's consumption of spiritual energy was even greater than the spiritual energy absorbed by the divine vein. Chu Fengmian could only take out a large number of saint-grade spirit stones from his empty ring and devour them to recover his spiritual power. Fortunately, Chu Fengmian had been using his divine vein to condense saint-grade spirit stones when he had nothing to do. Now, the number of saint-grade spirit stones in Chu Fengmian's spatial ring was in the billions. However, the number of saint-grade spiritual stones that Chu Fengmian was devouring at every moment was extremely shocking. He could devour tens of millions of saint-grade spiritual stones in a single breath. This was enough to support the consumption of Chu Fengmian's spiritual energy, allowing him to rush in with all his might. 6,900 li. While Chu Fengmian was rushing, he also remembered his current location. Suddenly, when Chu Fengmian raised his head and looked ahead, a palace suddenly came into Chu Fengmian's sight. This palace was completely different from the palaces that he had seen before. It was hundreds of times taller and had a majestic aura. At the top of the palace, there was a sculpture of a lion. Although it was a sculpture of a lion, the martial Tao that it contained was more terrifying than many martial ancestor sculptures. It was the sculpture of martial ancestor tyrannical lion. Only the sculpture of martial ancestor tyrannical lion could contain such terrifying martial Tao. The sculptures left behind by experts at the level of martial ancestor would contain martial intent. Once the martial Tao reached the peak, it would merge with the martial artist. For example, with Chu Fengmian's current sword Tao, If Chu Fengmian carved a stone sculpture with his own hands, it would also contain extremely terrifying sword intent. It would also be a precious treasure if it was passed down from ancient times. Of course, the primogenitor Sky Dragon statue was even more exaggerated. Not only was it enough to comprehend the primogenitor Sky Dragon's martial path, but it was also enough to comprehend the primogenitor Sky Dragon's strongest primogenitor's 9 moves. Upon having this thought, Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered with passion. Now that his strength had improved, it was more than enough for him to comprehend the 3rd or even the 4th form of the martial ancestor 9 forms. However, Chu Fengmian could not return to the sacred dragon mystical ground right now. If he could find a chance to retrieve the sculpture of martial ancestor Jianwang, it would be great. As Chu Fengmian's strength improved, he might be able to comprehend all 9 forms of the martial ancestor 9 forms one day. Once he had the chance, Chu Fengmian would return to the sacred dragon mystical ground to comprehend the sculpture of martial ancestor Jianwang. Chu Fengmian arrived at the palace while having such thoughts. Even from 100 li away, Chu Fengmian could sense the aura of the martial ancestor tyrannical lion's sculpture. Now that he was witnessing it with his own eyes, the aura of the martial ancestor tyrannical lion's sculpture felt like it was alive. It was as if the lion was only in a deep slumber. Once it was disturbed, it would awaken and tear everything before it apart. 7,000 miles. The end of this bridge is actually a full 7,000 miles. Only then can we reach the end of this bridge. As Chu Fengmian took the final step and arrived before the palace, the pressure on his body dissipated. Chu Fengmian knew that this was the end of the bridge, thus he had completed the trial of the martial ancestor tyrannical lion. Chu Fengmian's clothes were soaked in sweat, causing him to feel extremely worn out. However, with the power of his god vein, once the pressure was gone, he would recover. Within a few breaths' time, Chu Fengmian's qi had fully recovered. Following this, Chu Fengmian opened his eyes and glanced at the palace. The entrance of the palace was completely open. There were no forbidding auras or formations on it. Anyone could easily enter it. However, Chu Fengmian understood how difficult it was to enter the palace. A few forbidding auras and formations were incomparable to it. Even the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu was unable to enter the 7,000 li bridge. Only half-heaven realm cultivators would be able to enter it. The trial of the martial ancestor tyrannical lion was indeed terrifying. Only those with a strength close to the half-heaven realm would be able to complete the trial. Chu Fengmian felt his world spinning as he stepped into the palace. There was something different about the palace. Chapter 1569. As soon as he stepped into the palace, the world before him began to spin, before a mountain range appeared before him. Chu Fengmian immediately sensed a shocking presence of qi. The qi in the mountain range was a lot denser than the qi in the sword principal sect's small world. With a glance, Chu Fengmian saw an enormous qi spring at the bottom of the mountain range. The qi spring was 10 times larger than the qi spring in the sword principal sect. An endless amount of qi was being emitted from the qi spring. That was why the qi was so shocking. The mountain range was a lot better than the sacred ground and the sacred dragon mystical ground. A large number of herbs were growing in the mountain range. Perhaps it was due to the presence of qi, but the trees in the mountain range were extremely tall, reaching a height of over 1,000 zhang. However, apart from the vegetation, there was no sign of life. There were no signs of beasts or humans. Chu Fengmian was currently in a valley. There was a cave in the valley. This should be the real cave of the lion tyrant martial progenitor. Chu Fengmian glanced at the cave with a hint of a smile. Even though the lion tyrant martial progenitor had become a martial progenitor, he was still a lion in his bones. Even though there were countless palaces outside, his real cave abode was located in a mountain cave like this. Chu Fengmian took a glance at the cave, before stepping into it. The cave was pitch black from the outside, but as soon as Chu Fengmian stepped into it, the forbidding formations in the cave were suddenly activated, lighting up the entire cave. In this cave, there was only a simple stone bed. On this stone bed, there should have been a piece of beast skin. However, perhaps due to the passage of time, the beast's skin had already rotted away, leaving only a few traces behind. Apart from that, there was almost nothing extraordinary in the cave. It was just a simple cave. It was so simple that it was unbelievable. It was hard to believe that this used to be the cave of a martial progenitor. However, Chu Fengmian glanced at the cave. He did not believe that Chu Fengmian would return empty-handed after passing the trial on the Lion Tyrant Martial Ancestors Bridge. Once one stepped into the light screens on both sides of the bridge, one would be able to obtain a large amount of treasures. Therefore, it was impossible for one to obtain nothing in this cave. Chu Fengmian's gaze swept around and landed on the bottom of the stone bed. Suddenly, he gathered spirit energy in his palm and struck the stone bed. This stone bed was originally made of ordinary bluestone. Chu Fengmian's palm strike didn't even budge the bluestone. One had to know that with Chu Fengmian's current strength, even a casual palm strike could easily shatter a mountain range. Even if there were tens of millions of such bluestones added together, Chu Fengmian could easily crush them with a single palm strike. There is indeed something strange about this. The corners of Chu Fengmian's mouth curled into a slight smile. When his palm landed on the bluestone, its power suddenly dissipated, and it didn't hit the bluestone. This bluestone was indeed an ordinary bluestone that could be seen everywhere. However, there was something else behind this bluestone. Sword out! Chu Fengmian shouted coldly, and the ancestral dragon supreme sword appeared in his palm. In an instant, Chu Fengmian held the spiritual sword and slashed at the bluestone. With the spiritual sword in hand, the power of this slash was countless times more terrifying than Chu Fengmian's casual strike. Crack! The moment the sword tip flashed, a layer of restriction slowly emerged on the bluestone. Under Chu Fengmian's sword, the restriction hidden on the bluestone was also slashed out by Chu Fengmian's sword. Restriction, a restriction that has decayed for countless years, still wants to resist my sword? Chu Fengmian's face was incomparably cold when he saw the restriction emerge. However, the sword tip in Chu Fengmian's palm became even sharper. Break! Hiss! The sword tip flashed and slashed the restriction with extreme sharpness. With a single sword strike, the already decaying restriction suddenly collapsed. Boom! The bluestone that was protected by the restriction also cracked as the restriction was broken. Under Chu Fengmian's sword light, it was immediately shaken into a pile of powder. Chu Fengmian looked over and saw a secret chamber hidden under the bluestone. In this secret chamber, there was a coffin. This coffin was made of white jade. Chu Fengmian glanced at the coffin, then tapped it with his palm and opened it with a rumble. Then, Chu Fengmian looked over. There was no skeleton in this coffin. Instead, there was a jade bottle. This jade bottle contained a bottle of essence blood. The real treasure of the Lion Tyrant Martial Ancestor was such a bottle. Chu Fengmian glanced at the bottle of essence blood. He moved his palm and grabbed it. The bottle of essence blood fell into Chu Fengmian's palm without any resistance. Chu Fengmian held the bottle of essence blood in his palm. Through the jade bottle, Chu Fengmian seemed to be able to feel the terrifying power contained in the essence blood. The ultimate martial path, the invincible power contained in the essence blood. The essence blood of the Lion Tyrant Martial Ancestor. The Lion Tyrant Martial Ancestor actually left behind such a bottle of essence blood? Chu Fengmian glanced at it and realized the origin of this bottle of essence blood. It was the essence blood of the Lion Tyrant Martial Ancestor. A bottle of essence blood of a martial ancestor who had once reached the heaven realm. The instant Chu Fengmian picked up the bottle of essence blood, a series of words appeared in Chu Fengmian's mind. My lifespan is nearing its end. Thus, I left behind this cave dwelling in this essence blood. If any descendant of my clan obtains it, I hope you can use it to revitalize my clan. If an outsider obtains it, I hope you can take care of my clan when you encounter them in the future. Feel free to use this bottle of essence blood as you wish. The Lion Tyrant Martial Ancestor also could not escape the end of his lifespan. Chu Fengmian sighed after hearing this. The Lion Tyrant Martial Ancestor was an absolutely unparalleled overlord in the history of the 9 domains. To be able to be called a martial ancestor, his strength was unquestionable. Even among the Heaven Realm experts, the Lion Tyrant martial ancestor was an expert. Even so, he still could not escape the end of his lifespan. The Lion Tyrant martial ancestor had purposely left this cave dwelling behind so that his descendants could obtain it. However, there were no experts among the Lion clan of the 9 domains in the end. As such, after several 100,000 years, the cave dwelling was once again opened and divided among the others. I'll be taking this essence blood. In the future, if the Lion clan is in danger, I'll lend them a hand. Chu Fengmian said softly. Since Chu Fengmian had obtained the treasures in the cave dwelling, it could be said that he had obtained half of the Lion Tyrant martial ancestor's inheritance. Chu Fengmian would naturally repay this favor in the future. Chapter 1570. After Chu Fengmian picked up the bottle of blood essence, he closed the lid of the white jade coffin and left the secret chamber in a single step. The final treasure of the Lion Tyrant progenitor was this bottle of blood essence, a bottle of martial progenitor's blood essence. In terms of quantity, the bottle of martial progenitor's blood essence was not as valuable as the treasures in the light barrier outside. However, in terms of value, it was likely that the value of all the treasures in the light barrier outside was not as valuable as the bottle of martial progenitor's blood essence. There were only a few drops of heavenly human's blood essence left behind. Each drop was extremely precious. Each drop was extremely precious. If a half-heaven realm expert were to obtain a drop of heavenly human's blood essence, the amount of benefits they would receive would be greatly reduced. However, the heavenly human's blood essence still contained the power of the heavenly humans, thus it would be extremely helpful for them when attempting to break through to the heavenly human's realm in the future. A drop of heavenly human's blood essence was extremely precious. The martial progenitor's blood essence was even more precious than ordinary heavenly human's blood essence. However, Chu Fengmian had obtained more than a single drop of martial progenitor's blood essence. The bottle contained a few hundred drops of martial progenitor's blood essence. The loss of a few hundred drops of martial progenitor's blood essence was extremely serious for him. It was even possible that he would lose his strength and drop his cultivation. If it weren't for the fact that his lifespan was nearing its end, he would not have left the bottle of martial progenitor's blood essence. It was still too early for Chu Fengmian to comprehend the heavenly human's realm. However, Chu Fengmian was confident that he could improve his strength by more than 30% after devouring the bottle of martial progenitor's blood essence. Chu Fengmian glanced at the bottle of martial progenitor's blood essence. With a tap, the forbidding aura on the bottle broke open. Even after a few 100,000 years, the martial progenitor's blood essence still contained a terrifying power. As the forbidding aura was broken, the jade screen alone was unable to contain the martial progenitor's blood essence. Crack! Countless cracks appeared on the jade bottle. Following this, the martial progenitor's blood essence flew out from the bottle and turned into a lion in the air. This lion didn't care about Chu Fengmian and flew straight outside. Bloodlines had spirits. For experts like the Lion Tyrant martial progenitor, even if they were dead, their blood essence would still possess the power to gather life. Seeing that the martial progenitor's blood essence was trying to escape, Chu Fengmian sneered and suddenly reached out his hand and grabbed the lion. A surge of spiritual energy enveloped the lion formed from the martial ancestor's blood essence. The lion roared madly, but it was unable to break free from Chu Fengmian's grasp. The martial progenitor's blood essence, the martial progenitor's blood essence of the martial progenitor. This was especially true for the lump of martial ancestor blood essence, which had been sealed in a jade bottle for over 100,000 years. It. Of the Chu Fengmian activated the heaven-devouring secret skill. His body turned into a huge whirlpool and devoured the martial progenitor's blood essence. Once the martial progenitor's blood essence merged with Chu Fengmian's body, the power in his body began to rise, especially the battle dragon bloodline. The battle dragon bloodline went crazy. It devoured the power and spiritual energy contained in the martial progenitor's blood essence. Suddenly, a drop of martial progenitor's blood essence flew out from the 129,600 drops of ancient battle dragon blood essence in Chu Fengmian's body. The drop of martial progenitor's blood essence was devoured the fastest. Suddenly, countless runes appeared on the golden drop of battle dragon blood essence. The runes began to condense on the drop of battle dragon blood essence. As it was perfected, it turned into a formation. Boom! When the formation was completed, the power of the drop of battle dragon blood essence skyrocketed rapidly, which was over 100 times stronger than before. The Dragon Emperor's blood essence. Chu Fengmian saw the transformation of the drop of battle dragon blood essence. He knew that it was the beginning of the second level of the battle dragon skill. The formation in the blood was the appearance of the Dragon Emperor blood essence. An ancient dragon emperor was 100 times stronger than an ordinary ancient battle dragon. The power contained in the drop of Dragon Emperor blood essence was also 100 times stronger than the battle dragon blood essence. Although the transformation of a drop was not worth mentioning to Chu Fengmian's strength, if all of the battle dragon blood essence in Chu Fengmian's body were transformed into the Dragon Emperor blood essence, Chu Fengmian's strength would increase by 100 times. The drop of Dragon Emperor blood essence was only the first drop to be transformed. The power contained in a bottle of martial progenitor's blood essence was far more than that. The second drop, the third drop. After absorbing enough energy, the battle dragon essence blood began to transform and condense into the Dragon Emperor essence blood. 1,000 drops. When the last drop of martial progenitor's blood essence was devoured, the transformation of the battle dragon blood essence in Chu Fengmian's body gradually came to an end. After devouring the bottle of martial progenitor's blood essence, 1,000 drops of battle dragon blood essence became the Dragon Emperor blood essence. 1,000 drops of Dragon Emperor blood essence contain the same power as 100,000 drops of battle dragon blood essence. Although only 1,000 drops of the 129,600 drops of battle dragon blood essence had been transformed into the Dragon Emperor blood essence. However, Chu Fengmian's aura and strength had increased by about 70%. The benefits it brought were greater than what Chu Fengmian had expected. Chu Fengmian's cultivation realm had also increased along with his strength, stepping into the peak of the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu. He was only a step away from the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. The speed of his improvement was simply unimaginable. A few days ago, Chu Fengmian had just passed the Emperor Tribulation and stepped into the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu from the Quasi-Emperor realm. Now, after devouring the bottle of martial progenitor's blood essence, Chu Fengmian's cultivation realm had directly reached the peak of the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu. No wonder the emergence of the 9 domains has made so many people crazy. A large treasure trove is enough to bring such great benefits. Chu Fengmian sighed. If not for the bottle of martial progenitor's blood essence, Chu Fengmian might not be able to transform the battle dragon blood essence again even if he spent several years. However, with the help of the bottle of martial progenitor's blood essence, Chu Fengmian had easily transformed the 1,000 drops of ancient battle dragon blood essence into the Dragon Emperor blood essence. This was an opportunity, the opportunity of a large treasure trove. Obtaining such an opportunity was enough for a small figure to reach the sky in a single bound. The 5 Elements Saber Grandmaster, Ancestor by Luo. Chu Fengmian's eyes revealed a hint of murderous intent. Chu Fengmian still remembered the Builder Tree branch. It was time to take it back from Ancestor by Luo. Chapter 1571. After Chu Fengmian had completely refined the martial ancestor's blood essence, 1,000 drops of ancient war dragon blood essence had been transformed into Dragon Emperor blood essence. Now, Chu Fengmian's strength had nearly doubled. Moreover, with the enhancement of his bloodline power, Chu Fengmian's 9 moves of the primogenitor would be even more powerful. If Chu Fengmian could only contend with the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu before, he was now confident that he could kill the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu with a single strike. With such strength, Chu Fengmian was confident that he could defeat the 5 Elements Saber Master and Ancestor by Luo. Even if the two of them joined forces, Chu Fengmian would be able to kill them both. There are so many Emperor Gu of the 9 Tribulations on the bridge now. Chu Fengmian left the palace and stepped onto the bridge again. In an instant, he could feel the boundless power of the heavens and earth churning on the bridge. Almost every power of the heavens and earth represented a 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. In such a short period of time, 9 Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations had gathered on the bridge, excluding Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian used his spiritual consciousness to detect that among the 9 Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations, 5 of them belonged to the other 3 major forces. It seemed that the experts of the 3 major forces made up the majority of the 9 regions. After all, the 9 regions were still within the Daluotian star field. Therefore, the 3 major forces of the Daluotian star field were the first to know about the opening of the 9 regions. Although the news had already spread, the experts of the other star fields would have to spend a certain amount of time to rush over. However, as time passed, the experts of the other star fields would continue to rush over. Ancestor Bailuo hasn't left yet. Chu Fengmian scanned with his spiritual consciousness and saw a familiar figure. It was Ancestor Bailuo. Now, he had entered a light screen and was searching for the treasures within. An illusory image of a divine tree appeared on his body, containing extreme vitality. Chu Fengmian knew that Forefather Bailuo was refining the builder tree branch the moment he saw it. However, it was extremely difficult for Forefather Bailuo to refine the builder tree branch even though he had fused it into his body. However, he was still unable to completely refine it. All he could do was slowly erase the power of the creation tree branch. The divine tree projection on Forefather Bailuo's body was formed because he couldn't completely refine the builder tree branch, causing the power within it to leak out. Chu Fengmian sneered when he saw this. With Chu Fengmian's current strength, he could fight 1 against 2 or even 3 against the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu, but that would only be a defeat. The difficulty of killing a 9 tribulations Emperor Gu was dozens of times greater than defeating him. Forefather Bailuo was alone, which was the best time for Chu Fengmian to strike. Chu Fengmian's figure flickered and flew in the direction of the light curtain. He began to pass through the bridge. After refining the martial ancestor's blood essence, Chu Fengmian's body was tainted with martial ancestor tyrannical lion's aura. The pressure on the bridge that enveloped Chu Fengmian was less than 1/10 of what it had been before. In the blink of an eye, Chu Fengmian stepped into the light curtain. Who's there? Forefather Bailuo was searching for the treasures within the light curtain. He fully unfolded his spiritual consciousness and observed every movement in the surroundings. Killing and robbing were common on the bridge. Forefather Bailuo was extremely cautious. Suddenly, he felt an aura step into the light curtain. Without any explanation, he condensed several green bamboos from his palm and stabbed at the entrance of the light curtain. The speed of these bamboos was a bit faster than when he fought with Chu Fengmian. Moreover, there were golden spots on the green bamboos. Forefather Bailuo's aura was stronger than when he fought with Chu Fengmian. The builder tree branch was worthy of being a wood attribute treasure. Although Forefather Bailuo had only refined a small part of it, it was enough to elevate his strength and increase his strength. The bamboos were like spears, piercing straight at Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian's figure flashed as he executed Phantom Body. He sensed danger as soon as he stepped into the light curtain. The bamboos pierced through an illusory figure. The real Chu Fengmian was already standing in the secret chamber not far from Forefather Bailuo. Chu Fengmian, it's you? Forefather Bailuo turned his head and looked in Chu Fengmian's direction. When he saw Chu Fengmian's appearance, his face twisted into a sinister expression. Beneath his ferocious face were a pair of greedy eyes. When he'd fought with Chu Fengmian earlier, he'd learned of his countless fortuitous encounters. Even the famous 9 profound immortal arts were in his hands. After completely refining the builder tree branch, Forefather Bailuo's strength would rise to an unimaginable level. At the very least, he'd be able to reach the peak of 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. If he could obtain Chu Fengmian's 9 mystic immortal art, with the strength of a peak 9 tribulations ancient emperor, the power of the 9 mystic immortal art would be enough to contend against a half-step celestial being. By then, his strength would increase by more than 10-fold or even 100-fold. This is an opportunity bestowed upon me by the heavens. Brat, You barged into the gates of hell. Don't even think about escaping this time. Forefather Bailuo's eyes flashed with killing intent. He'd just devoured a part of the builder tree branch and his strength had soared when he ran into Chu Fengmian. Now was the best time to kill him. Forefather Bailuo let out a long howl and countless bamboos sprouted from the ground. Each of these bamboos contained an ancient pattern. Countless green bamboos surrounded the secret chamber and formed into a sealing technique that sealed the surrounding space. No matter how powerful the escaping light was, it wouldn't be able to escape from this seal. Last time, he'd underestimated his enemy and allowed Chu Fengmian to use the Jianwang change to escape through the space. This time, he'd sealed the space immediately. At the same time, Forefather Bailuo also made his move. Hundreds of bamboos formed into an incomparably huge spear and blasted towards Chu Fengmian. Escape? Who said I'm here to escape? Chu Fengmian's eyes flashed with mockery. So what if Forefather Bailuo's strength had increased? Chu Fengmian's harvest and martial progenitor tyrannical lion's cave abode was much more than Forefather Bailuo's. Boom! Chu Fengmian's strength erupted without any concealment and an aura soared into the sky. Chapter 1572. The peak power of 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu soared into the sky, forming the shadow of an ancient battle dragon that shrouded Chu Fengmian. Although Chu Fengmian was at the peak of 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu, his strength was stronger than that of 9th Tribulation Emperor Gu. In particular, the battle dragon shadow on Chu Fengmian's body no longer looked like an ordinary ancient battle dragon, but like a dragon emperor, incomparably noble. In an instant, Chu Fengmian's strength was vividly displayed. Peak of 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu? When Ancestor Bailuo saw Chu Fengmian's realm clearly, the astonishment in his eyes didn't dissipate for a long time. The last time he saw Chu Fengmian's realm had just stepped into 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu. Many geniuses would have to spend decades to reach the peak of 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu's realm and meet some Emperor Gu with average aptitude. Hundreds of years might not be enough for 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu to reach the peak of 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu, but Chu Fengmian's strength had increased so quickly in just a day. This kind of increase in strength was simply appalling. Ancestor Bailuo thought that it would be easy to kill Chu Fengmian after he got the builder tree branch and devoured part of its power. But now, Chu Fengmian's strength was beyond his imagination. While Ancestor Bailuo was still in shock, Chu Fengmian had already made his move. Facing the attack of the bamboo spear, Chu Fengmian only raised his palm gently. Behind Chu Fengmian, the power of the war dragon's shadow gathered in Chu Fengmian's palm. Then, he struck out with his palm. A group of dragons roared as if a real dragon was performing a martial technique of the dragon clan. The second move of primogenitor. The power of bloodline boiled. This time, the power of the second move of primogenitor was countless times stronger than before. A palm shot out and collided with the bamboo spear in the air. The bamboo spear exploded on the spot, shattered by a single palm strike. The tyrannical power forced Ancestor Bailuo to retreat. Now that Chu Fengmian's strength had improved further, an ordinary 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu would find it hard to contend with Chu Fengmian's strength. Damn it! How did this person's strength increase to such a level? Could it be that the treasure at the end of this bridge has been obtained by this person? Forefather Bailuo sobered up after being sent flying. Chu Fengmian's strength was no longer something he could contend with. Even among the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, this kind of strength was absolutely strong. In just one day, Chu Fengmian's strength had doubled. There was no other possibility other than the fact that Chu Fengmian had obtained the treasure at the end of the bridge. He has obtained another large treasure trove. If he continues to develop, he will really become the second Yanzun. Ancestor Bailuo's eyes flashed with a hint of decisiveness. He suddenly let out a wild roar that resounded through the entire bridge. This roar seemed to be a unique calling sound. Chu Fengmian had already discovered with his spiritual sense that several 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu were rapidly approaching after Ancestor Bailuo's roar. Ancestor Bailuo was calling for the arrival of the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu from the other 3 forces. He now knew that he was no match for Chu Fengmian alone, so he gave up the idea of taking the treasure from Chu Fengmian alone. He wanted to summon the other 9 tribulations Emperor Gu to deal with Chu Fengmian. You still want to call for help? I'll kill you first. Murderous intent surged in Chu Fengmian's eyes. He didn't know if he could delay any longer. Chu Fengmian still had a chance to kill Ancestor Bailuo in a one-on-one fight. However, if Ancestor Bailuo summoned the other 9 tribulations Emperor Gu, it would be a one-on-one fight. When that happened, Chu Fengmian would have to fight 1 against 2 or 3. It would be virtually impossible for him to kill Forefather Biluo and obtain the Builder Tree branch. In a flash, sword light flew out from the World's Edge sword case on Chu Fengmian's back, shooting out hundreds of sword lights. The power of each sword light reached the peak of the 8 tribulations Emperor Gu's attack. As Chu Fengmian's strength increased, the sword energy from the World's Edge sword case grew stronger. After all, the World's Edge sword case was once a Celestial Realm expert's spiritual weapon. As Chu Fengmian's strength increased, its true power was displayed. Hundreds of sword lights gathered together and slashed at Ancestor Bailuo from the sky. Immortal rotten wood. Forefather Bailuo sensed the danger when he saw the incoming sword light. With a long whistle, a small piece of withered wood appeared in his palm. Although this piece of withered wood was withered, the vitality it contained was comparable to the creation tree branch. Ancestor Bailuo's figure flashed and merged with the small piece of dead wood, turning into a decaying tree. He became one with the tree. The rotten wood wrapped around Forefather Jaderhead's body, protecting it with a powerful life force. What is this decaying tree? How can it have such amazing vitality? Chu Fengmian's expression changed when he saw the decaying tree. Even at first glance, Chu Fengmian could tell that the decaying tree was extraordinary. Its terrifying vitality was not inferior to the Builder Tree branch. Now that Ancestor Bailuo had merged with the decaying tree, his aura skyrocketed. Although Patriarch Bailuo couldn't attack in this state, it was almost impossible for him to kill Patriarch Bailuo with his astonishing vitality. Hundreds of sword lights from the World's Edge sword case gathered into a huge sword light and slashed down from the sky onto the decaying tree. Where the sword light landed, a crack immediately tore open. But just as the decaying tree was about to be cut in half, a burst of vitality erupted. A shocking amount of life force immediately burst out from within, and the cracks that had appeared were perfectly repaired. The power of the sword couldn't leave a single mark on Ancestor Bailuo's body. How troublesome! Chu Fengmian's eyes showed some anxiety. He had sensed that the other Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations were about to arrive. Ancestor Bailuo's move was to stall for time and wait for the other Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations to arrive before besieging Chu Fengmian. Ancestor Bailuo sneered when he saw the anxiety in Chu Fengmian's eyes. Boy, do you really think you can kill a 9 tribulations Emperor Gu just because you have a few fortuitous encounters? In a while, it will be the time of your death. He only needed to stall for time and wait for the other Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations to arrive. No matter how strong Chu Fengmian was, he wouldn't be able to take on 3 people. Chu Fengmian wouldn't be able to fight 1 against 3. If he fought 1 against 4, Chu Fengmian would die under the siege. I'll take the Builder Tree branch first. Chu Fengmian was also thinking about this. Suddenly, he made a decision and rushed toward Ancestor Bailuo in a flash. Chapter 1573. Chu Fengmian made up his mind. He didn't have to kill Forefather Biluo today, but he had to get his hands on the Builder Tree branch. Now that Forefather Biluo had only refined a very small part of the branch, Chu Fengmian could still use some means to take it out of Forefather Biluo's body. The branch would be of great benefit to Chu Fengmian's divine tree. Chu Fengmian was determined to get his hands on the branch no matter what. Chu Fengmian's figure flickered and arrived in front of Forefather Biluo in the blink of an eye. The Ancestral Dragon Supreme Sword and Titanic Pagoda Godly Sword struck out at the same time. Dazzling sword radiance contained supreme sword intent as it slashed at Forefather Biluo. It's useless. You think you can break through my true body of rotten wood? Forefather Biluo smirked disdainfully at Chu Fengmian's incoming sword radiance. He allowed the sword radiance to strike his body. Hiss! When the sword light slashed down, Forefather Biluo's rottenwood form was sliced to pieces. What happened next was exactly the same as what had happened before. A surge of vitality condensed and the cracks on the rottenwood began to heal. Forefather Jade Konk's rottenwood form seemed to have an undying body. No matter how powerful an attack was, it was able to dissolve it and recover. This rottenwood is definitely not inferior to the branch of the builder tree. It might even be a supreme treasure that surpasses it. Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered as he stared at the rotten wood. This power definitely didn't belong to Forefather Biluo, but to the rotten wood. Now, Forefather Jade Konk had become one with the piece of rotten wood. The power of Chu Fengmian's sword slash all hit the rotten wood and was neutralized by this piece of rotten wood. Don't waste your energy, kid. You won't be able to escape if you don't escape soon. Forefather Biluo taunted Chu Fengmian. You're just a turtle shell. I'd like to see how long you can last. Chu Fengmian's eyes flashed with fury, as if he was truly enraged by Forefather Biluo's words. He condensed sword radiance and the blade flashed, bombarding the rotten wood with several more sword radiances. Streaks of sword light slashed at the rotten wood, shattering it again and again until it was riddled with holes. However, even though it was riddled with holes, the rottenwood still exuded an astonishing vitality. During the interval between the swords, the rottenwood was able to recover. Chu Feng even tried to burn the rottenwood with his pure yang heavenly fire, but to his surprise, he was unable to burn it. Fire restrains wood. This was a matter of course. But the pure yang heavenly fire was actually helpless against this piece of rotten wood. What's going on? Forefather Biluo, who forced you to do this? Rumble. All of a sudden, the light screen flickered, and a figure stepped into it, passing through it and arriving in the secret chamber. This was a Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. Judging from the strength of his body, he should be a Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu from the Blue Sea capital. The arrival of Emperor Gu startled him when he saw Forefather Biluo turn into a piece of rotten wood. He and Biluo were old acquaintances, so he naturally understood that this move was the Forefather's ultimate life-saving move. He wouldn't use it unless he was in a life-or-death situation. But now, Forefather Biluo had been forced to use all his trump cards. Biluo was overjoyed when he saw the newcomer. You've come at the right time, King Sunflower Ocean. This kid is Chu Fengmian. Join me and kill him. Chu Fengmian? King Sunflower Ocean, Emperor Gu, stared at Chu Fengmian with a frosty gaze. News of Chu Fengmian's escape from Forefather Biluo and Five Elements Saber Master in a 1 versus 2 fight had spread. The growth of Chu Fengmian's strength was too terrifying. Now, the 9 Tribulation Ancient Emperors of the 3 major forces had given the order to kill Chu Fengmian. He had to kill Chu Fengmian before he reached his full potential. King Sunflower Ocean didn't hesitate to attack when he heard Biluo's words. A trident flew out of his hand. The trident was said to be the weapon of the sea god. Many Emperor Gu of the Blue Ocean capital used tridents as their weapons. Spiritual energy gathered on the trident's edge as soon as it appeared, and it blasted at Chu Fengmian. Sword break! Chu Fengmian glanced at the trident and sent out a beam of sword light with a flash of sword edge in his hand. When the halberd and sword collided, King Sunflower Sea felt a huge force hit him. He almost lost his grip on the trident and was forced to retreat. His eyes were filled with disbelief. How can he possess such strength? Isn't he just an 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu? King Sunflower Ocean didn't understand how Chu Fengmian could possess such strength. Although Chu Fengmian was only an 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu, he was stronger than many 9th Tribulation Emperor Gu in terms of strength. The strength of an ordinary 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu wasn't even a tenth of a 9th Tribulation Emperor Gu's strength. In King Sunflower Ocean's opinion, Chu Fengmian could only contend with him at best, even if he had some fortuitous encounters. King Sunflower Ocean knew he was wrong after this exchange. Chu Fengmian's strength was already above many 9th Tribulation Emperor Gu's. If he didn't use his full strength, he might even be defeated by Chu Fengmian, let alone kill him. Sea God descends. Halberd disrupts heaven and earth. King Sunflower Sea let out a roar and executed his strongest move. An illusionary figure of the god of the sea appeared behind him. As soon as the phantom appeared, King Sunflower Ocean's strength soared several times. Every time he swung the trident in his hand, it seemed to be able to stir up the universe. Holding the trident, King Sunflower Ocean approached in a flash, thrusting the trident at Chu Fengmian's chest. The sharpness of the trident was unstoppable. Crafty bamboo spear. Forefather Bailuo also dispelled the state of being one with the tree. With a wave of his hand, he sent bamboo spears as sharp as spears at Chu Fengmian's back. They formed a pincer attack on Chu Fengmian. You want to besiege me? Voracious wolf. Giant door. Lutsuin. Heavenly mystery. The power of the stars gathered on the twin swords. Chu Fengmian slashed out with his sword and turned it into a river of stars. The bamboos and the trident attacks all fell into the river of stars and were washed away by the endless power within it, turning into fragments. The power within became a part of the river of stars. Heaven-devouring secret technique. At the same time, Chu Fengmian suddenly made his move. A heaven-devouring seed had appeared beside Forefather Bailuo without anyone noticing. With Chu Fengmian's urging, the heaven-devouring seed erupted and turned into a heaven-devouring secret technique. Chapter 1574. Next to Forefather Bailuo, the Sky Devourer's secret art suddenly erupted. The raging power devoured Forefather Bailuo, causing him to lose his balance and be pulled into the vortex of the heaven-engulfing secret art. Forefather Bailuo couldn't react in time to the sudden turn of events. Chu Fengmian had been waiting for Bailuo to make a move. If Bailuo had remained as a piece of rotten wood, Chu Fengmian wouldn't have been able to do anything to him. However, Bailuo had always wanted to kill Chu Fengmian, which Chu Fengmian took advantage of. He purposely revealed an opening and allowed Bailuo to launch a sneak attack. If Bailuo wanted to attack, he would have to break free from the state of being one with the wood. This was Chu Fengmian's chance. What's going on? As someone who'd experienced countless battles of life and death, Bailuo's figure flashed and he barely managed to break free of the Sky Devourer's secret art's devouring. However, the suction of the giant vortex didn't let him go. Under the shroud of this devouring power, Patriarch Bailuo's body was being pulled towards the sky-devouring secret technique at every moment. Forefather Bailuo understood that he'd fallen into Chu Fengmian's trap. Undying rotten wood. Ancestor Bailuo roared and tried to activate the power of the rotten wood in his palm again. Astonishing life force began to fuse with his body again. Humph, you want to become one with the wood again? Primogenitor's second move. Break! Chu Fengmian glared at Bailuo. He'd gone to great lengths to trick Bailuo into breaking free from the state of being one with the wood. How could he allow him to burrow into his turtle shell again? Just as Ancestor Bailuo was about to become one with the tree, a wave of spiritual energy had already accumulated above Chu Fengmian's head. Chu Fengmian let out a long howl. Chu Fengmian roared and slammed down. Rumble! Wherever the dragon claw passed, it swept through everything and slammed into Ancestor Bailuo's body. Although Bailuo's body was close to becoming one with the wood, Chu Fengmian's claw slammed into him and blew him up in the air. He turned into a ball of essence blood. The piece of ebony in his hand also flew out. Good stuff, give it to me. Chu Fengmian looked at the piece of ebony that flew out and coldly shouted. A dragon claw directly grabbed at the piece of ebony. Halberd suppresses the ocean. Right behind Chu Fengmian, a halberd light slashed towards him. However, Chu Fengmian was prepared. Behind Chu Fengmian, hundreds of sword chi flew out from the world's edge sword case and slashed towards King Sunflower Sea, blocking his halberd light. At the same time, Chu Fengmian grabbed the ebony in his hand. As soon as it fell into Chu Fengmian's hand, the surging vitality of this piece of ebony entered his body. Chu Fengmian could sense that the divine tree within his body had become incomparably excited, thirsting for the power of this piece of ebony. This ebony is indeed related to the tree of God. Chu Fengmian was overjoyed. Based on the reaction of the divine tree alone, he knew that the ebony was definitely a precious treasure. In terms of value, it might not be inferior to the half-man-tall builder tree branch. It should be known that Ancestor Bai Luo was almost invincible in front of Chu Fengmian with this piece of ebony. This was something that even a heaven-grade spiritual weapon could not achieve. However, Chu Fengmian didn't just want the ebony tree. He also wanted the builder tree branch. Tree of God. Chu Fengmian roared, and the shadow of the tree of God immediately flew out from behind him. The moment the shadow of the tree of God flew out, it immediately locked onto Ancestor Bai Luo's body and emitted a wave of spiritual energy. Due to this wave of spiritual energy, the shadow of the builder tree behind Ancestor Bai Luo began to totter, and the builder tree branch began to be stripped from Ancestor Bai Luo's body. In a burst of dazzling green light, the builder tree branch was pulled out of Ancestor Bai Luo's body little by little. What is this? This builder tree branch has been refined by me and has become one with me. How can it be pulled out by someone else? What a pure wood elemental spiritual energy. This is a tree of God. There is actually a living tree of God in this world? And it has been subdued? How is this possible? Ancestor Bai Luo stared at Chu Fengmian and shouted in disbelief. He could see that there was a tree of God hidden in Chu Fengmian's body. It was the power of the tree of God that was stripping the builder tree branch from his body. No matter how deep his understanding of wood elemental spiritual energy was, it couldn't be compared to a real tree of God. Wood King descends. Suppress all trees. Ancestor Bai Luo roared and urged all his means to suppress the builder tree branch. He wanted to keep it in his body. Even if the Wood King were alive, he wouldn't be able to go against the tree of God. Take it away. Chu Fengmian shouted coldly and injected a wave of spiritual energy into the tree of God. Immediately, the power of the tree of God skyrocketed countless times. The builder tree branch was immediately stripped from Ancestor Bai Luo's body. The branch, which was half the height of a person, only had about 80% of its original power left. Obviously, 20% of its power had been devoured by Ancestor Bai Luo. No matter how many means Chu Fengmian had, it was useless. However, even with 80% of its power left, the power contained in the builder tree branch was extremely shocking. The branch flew into the tree of God's shadow and was immediately devoured by the tree of God, pulling it into Chu Fengmian's body. Chu Fengmian? The moment Chu Fengmian took the builder tree branch, a figure walked in from the light screen. The moment he saw Chu Fengmian's appearance, the figure instantly attacked. The power of the 5 elements condensed into a long saber in his hand. The power of the saber was aimed at Chu Fengmian. 5 elements saber master. Chu Fengmian knew who came the moment the saber appeared. Facing the saber, Chu Fengmian slashed with the sword in his hand and collided with the 5 elements divine saber in the air. The violent power bombarded the 5 elements divine saber. The 5 elements divine saber that was slashing towards him was immediately shattered. How is this possible? How did this kid's power increase so much? The 5 elements saber master stared at Chu Fengmian and said in disbelief. This time, Chu Fengmian's strength had increased by a whole fold. The treasure at the end of the bridge was most likely obtained by this kid. Don't talk nonsense with him. I don't believe that a mere 8 tribulations Emperor Gu can contend with the 3 of us. Even if this kid has many fortuitous encounters, we can still kill him. Chapter 1575. Forefather Bai Luo stared at Chu Fengmian and roared crazily. His eyes were filled with burning greed. He had actually found a divine tree in Chu Fengmian's body. Moreover, it was still a young divine tree. It was a divine tree that could be subdued. This discovery drove Forefather Bai Luo mad. As a wood attribute cultivator, Ancestor Bai Luo naturally knew how powerful the divine tree was. He had only devoured a small portion of the builder tree branch, but it was enough to make his strength undergo a tremendous change. There was an entire divine tree in Chu Fengmian's body. With this divine tree, I'm sure I can enter the half-step celestial realm, or even the celestial realm. A divine tree at its peak is comparable to a celestial realm cultivator. I must have this divine tree. Forefather Bailuo gave it his all. The blood mist that filled the sky condensed into a figure under his vitality. Given his realm of the 9 tribulations, Emperor Gu, the destruction of his physical body didn't cost him much. Hundreds of green bamboos stabbed at Chu Fengmian under the control of his spiritual power. You want to kill me with just the 3 of you working together? What a joke! Today, I'll show you my true strength. Chu Fengmian was in a good mood after obtaining the builder tree branch in the ebony. He wasn't afraid at all when the 3 of them worked together. He wanted to see how strong he had become. Now that he had obtained the builder tree branch, Chu Fengmian had no scruples. He didn't even pay attention to the countless green bamboos bombarding him. He allowed the countless bamboos to pierce Chu Fengmian's body. Crack! The bamboos pierced Chu Fengmian's body one after another. Chu Fengmian's seemingly weak skin was now as hard as steel. Every single bamboo was unable to pierce through Chu Fengmian's skin. On Chu Fengmian's skin were 129,600 fleshly crystals, forming a perfect defense. The sharp edges of the bamboos were all broken. Forefather Bailuo, 5 elements Saber Master, King Sunflower Ocean, you 3 will die here today. Don't even think about escaping. Chu Fengmian laughed and struck with both swords. 2 beams of sword light aimed at Forefather Bailuo and 5 elements Saber Patriarch. At the same time, the World's Edge sword case behind Chu Fengmian was also flashing with sword lights. They flew out from the World's Edge sword case and slashed towards King Sunflower Sea. 1 against 3. Facing these 3 9 tribulations Emperor Gu, Chu Fengmian was fighting 1 against 3, and now he had the upper hand. The power of this builder tree branch is indeed strong. Chu Fengmian dared to take on the 3 of them one-on-one because he could feel a steady stream of power pouring into his body after the creation tree branch was refined by the divine tree. Even though it was difficult for Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations to refine this builder tree branch, it was a matter of seconds for Chu Fengmian. The divine tree was once a branch of the builder tree, so it was of the same origin as the builder tree branch. The moment the builder tree branch fell into the hands of the divine tree, it was instantly devoured and its power poured into Chu Fengmian's body. Chu Fengmian's strength had doubled after devouring the martial ancestor's blood essence, and now he had devoured the power of the builder tree branch. There was no reason for him to escape. The 9 tribulations Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations were the top echelons of the 3 great forces. Every time Chu Fengmian killed one of them, it would be a heavy blow to the 3 great forces. Of course, Chu Fengmian would not let go of such an opportunity. 9 Mysterious Galaxy. Rumble. The galaxy formed by the 9 mysterious swordsmanship shrouded Chu Fengmian and bombarded the 5 elements Saber Master, Forefather Bailuo, and King Sunflower Sea. In an instant, the 3 of them were pulled into the galaxy. Countless streaks of sword chi in the galaxy slashed at the 3 of them. Damn it, this kid's strength has increased. How did he refine the builder tree branch so quickly? Forefather Bailuo sensed Chu Fengmian's power, his eyes filled with incomparable madness. He could feel the power of the divine tree rising in Chu Fengmian's body. It was obvious that the builder tree branch had been refined by Chu Fengmian. After a few exchanges, Chu Fengmian's strength did not weaken, but instead grew stronger. As the divine tree refined the builder tree branch, its power rose steadily, which also meant that Chu Fengmian's strength was also growing stronger. Now, the 3 of them could not fight back even if they joined forces. We can't be entangled with this guy. Let's go. Damn it, this guy is indeed a big problem. When we get out, we must gather the other Emperor Gu and kill him together. The 5 elements Saber Master roared and made his decision. Let's go. King Sunflower Sea also roared. The power of the 3 suddenly condensed together, turning into a divine light that could split the sky and earth, bombarding the Milky Way. It forcibly created a gap in the galaxy formed by the 9 profound sword technique. This divine ray broke through the galaxy and flew directly in the direction of the light curtain. Chu Fengmian did not expect this. The Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu still had such terrifying strength even after risking his life. Chu Fengmian could suppress the three of them, but it would be extremely difficult to catch all three of them in one fell swoop. I can't let them escape. Chu Fengmian's eyes revealed some killing intent. In order to deal with the three of them, Chu Fengmian had exposed the secret of the divine tree and used all his trump cards. If he did not kill the three of them, he would definitely be in great trouble in the future. Supreme Sword Formation. 1,800 Supreme Sword Chi flew out from Chu Fengmian's body and came to the entrance of the light curtain. They intertwined with each other and turned into a Supreme Sword Formation. Among the sword formations in the world, the strongest one was the Supreme Sword Formation formed by Supreme Sword Chi. This was the ancestor of the Myriad Sword Formation, and also the world's #1 killing formation. Supreme Sword Chi. How could such a sword principle treasure be in his hands? How many amazing fortuitous encounters has this person had? Seeing the Supreme Sword Formation formed by the Supreme Sword Chi and sealed the light curtain, the Five Elements Saber Master and the other two were almost mad with jealousy. Supreme Sword Principle Treasure, innate Divine Beast Essence Blood, and even the Divine Tree. Every encounter Chu Fengmian had made them mad with jealousy. They could not wait to kill Chu Fengmian and divide the treasures on him. Their strength would improve by leaps and bounds. But now, what they needed to do was to escape. This Supreme Sword Formation is not complete. It's only formed by a part of it. Let's rush out. The Five Elements Saber Grandmaster took a glance at the Supreme Sword Formation. He could tell that the Supreme Sword Formation was different from the rumors. It was incomplete. Chapter 1576. The Supreme Sword Formation formed from 3,000 Supreme Sword Chis was the world's #1 killing formation. Even if one of them was missing, its power would be weakened countless times. Although Chu Fengmian had obtained 1,800 Supreme Sword Chis, the Supreme Sword Formation was still incomplete. If the complete Supreme Sword Formation was formed, the three of them would not be able to break it even if they tried their best. Burn the laws of heaven and earth. Strike! The spiritual power of the Five Elements Saber Grandmaster suddenly became extremely violent, and a golden light flew out from his body. This golden light contained the rich power of heaven and earth. It contained 500 laws of heaven and earth. An ordinary Emperor Gu of the Nine Tribulations only had about 2,000 laws of heaven and earth in his body. 500 laws of heaven and earth were struck out by the Five Elements Saber Master, which was almost a quarter of the power in his body. Golden flames were ignited in front of him and began to burn fiercely. Waves of extremely strong power surged into the Five Elements Saber Grandmaster's body, causing his power to grow crazily. Fight! Ancestor Bai Luo and King Sunflower Ocean exchanged a glance. The power in their bodies became violent as they each took out 500 strands of nomological laws of heaven and earth. They burned at the same time. The power of 1,500 laws of heaven and earth burned at this moment. The golden flame shrouded the escaping light and turned into a long rainbow. It crashed into the Supreme Sword Formation in the direction of the light screen. Boom! After burning the laws of heaven and earth, the combined power of the three was almost at the level of a half-step celestial being. Any Emperor Gu of the Nine Tribulations would die on the spot if he were to withstand such a powerful attack. The long rainbow bombarded the center of the Supreme Sword Formation. Countless cracks appeared on the Supreme Sword Formation formed by 1,800 Supreme Sword Chis at the moment of collision. Hundreds of Supreme Sword Chis were immediately scattered and flew out. The Supreme Sword Formation was in imminent danger. Boom! At this moment, another rich power of heaven and earth descended. At this critical moment, another figure appeared from the light screen. Another Emperor Gu of the Nine Tribulations had arrived. Who is it? Emperor Yan? It's Emperor Yan. Emperor Yan, come and help us. After we kill this kid, we'll give you a share of his fortune. From now on, our three forces will protect your Yanzhou continent. The Five Elements Saber Master and the others said in unison. Although the three of them were at a disadvantage in the fight with Chu Fengmian, the result would be different if there was another Emperor Gu of the Nine Tribulations. After all, Chu Fengmian had already used all his trump cards to deal with the three of them. With the addition of a Nine Tribulation Ancient Emperor, they had a 50% chance of killing Chu Fengmian. Even if he didn't kill Chu Fengmian, he could still severely injure him. At the very least, Chu Fengmian wouldn't be able to recover for several years. In order to kill Chu Fengmian, they were willing to give up some benefits to win over the Yan Emperor. Emperor. When Chu Fengmian saw this figure, the tension in his heart finally relaxed a little, and the corner of his mouth revealed a somewhat cold smile. Emperor's Emperor Emperor. The Five Elements Saber Master's eyes flickered. Seeing that Emperor Yan had no intention of attacking, he hurriedly shouted. Boom! After hearing this, the Yan Emperor finally condensed spiritual energy in his palm. This also made the Five Elements Saber Master and the others relax a little. But at this moment, this spiritual power suddenly shot out from Emperor Yan's palm. However, this target was not Chu Fengmian, but a palm directly bombarded the Five Elements Saber Master. What? Puff! Before the Five Elements Saber Master could react, he was hit in the chest by the palm. He immediately spat out a large mouthful of blood essence. His face was extremely pale. In order to break the Supreme Sword formation, he had burned 500 laws of heaven and earth. His body was extremely weak. At this moment, he was suddenly hit by a palm, and the power in his body collapsed on the spot. His realm fell with this large mouthful of blood essence. He fell to the realm of Emperor Gu of the Eight Tribulations. Even if the Five Elements Saber Master recovered from this injury, his strength would be reduced by a few %. Emperor Yan, what are you planning to do? Could it be that you plan to become enemies with the three major forces? Seeing the Five Elements Saber Master being sent flying, Ancestor Bai Luo and King Sunflower Sea stared at Chu Fengmian and said fiercely. Emperor Yan, even if you have stepped into the realm of Emperor Gu of the Nine Tribulations, you are just an ant in front of the three major forces. What are you trying to do today? That's right. If you don't give me an explanation, you will be buried with this kid today. Explanation? What kind of explanation? Do I need to give you three dead people any explanation? Suddenly, Chu Fengmian spoke. He looked at the Five Elements Saber Master and the other two as if he was looking at three dead people. Then, Chu Fengmian looked at Emperor Yan and said. Let's attack together. Don't waste time. Kill them first. Okay. Emperor Yan nodded and attacked with Chu Fengmian almost at the same time. It was almost impossible for Chu Fengmian to kill the three of them alone, but with Emperor Yan, it was not difficult to kill the three of them. Moreover, the Five Elements Saber Master was seriously injured and could be considered half a cripple. Now, only Ancestor Bai Luo and King Sunflower Sea needed to deal with him. Sword out. Sword light flashed in Chu Fengmian's hands as he attacked Ancestor Bai Luo with both swords. Compared to King Sunflower Sea, Chu Fengmian had a deeper grudge with Ancestor Bai Luo. Naturally, he wanted to kill Ancestor Bai Luo with his own hands. Sword light flashed and two sword chi slashed at Ancestor Bai Luo. Run! Ancestor Bai Luo turned around and ran without hesitation. His body turned into a wooden boat and he wanted to fly away. Still want to run? Today, you will die under my sword. Chu Fengmian laughed loudly. His figure flashed, moving even faster than the wooden boat. In a flash, he arrived next to it. Whoosh! Chu Fengmian brandished his sword and slashed at the wooden boat. The boat was torn to pieces, and Forefather Bai Luo's body exploded in the air once more. This time, Chu Fengmian wouldn't give Ancestor Bai Luo a chance to rebuild his body. He suddenly grasped with his hand. Chu Fengmian grabbed a ball of Ancestor Bai Luo's blood essence and condensed it into a ball. Then, he activated the sky-devouring secret technique and swallowed it all. No, I am Emperor Gu of the Nine Tribulations. How can I die? Even if I die, I will take you down with me. Explode. Explode! Explode! Ancestor Bailuo's crazy roar came from the sky-devouring secret technique. His spiritual energy was wild and every ball of blood essence was burning. He wanted to self-destruct to take Chu Fengmian down with him. Chapter 1577. 9 Tribulations. Emperor Gu's self-detonation was powerful enough to shake heaven and earth and destroy a continent. Every drop of Forefather Biluo's blood was burning and expanding madly, determined to take Chu Fengmian down with him. You want to take me down with you? You don't have the qualifications to do so. Your blood essence will become my nourishment. Devour it all. Suppress. He uttered the word suppress. An ancient bronze cauldron flew out from Chu Fengmian's body. It pressed down on Forefather Biluo's body. The cauldron had 9 dragon heads, each vivid and lifelike, like a real dragon head. Divine 9 Dragons Cauldron. It ranked 11th among the world's 100 cauldrons. The Divine 9 Dragons Cauldron was a medicinal cauldron, but it had the power to suppress everything. Chu Fengmian deployed this suppressive artifact to suppress Forefather Biluo. Boom! Patriarch Jadersnail's madly burning essence blood was completely extinguished by this suppression. Then, the sky-devouring secret technique was activated, devouring thousands of drops of blood and turning them into pure spiritual energy. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian felt a stream of pure spiritual energy pouring into his body. No! Forefather Biluo roared madly. However, it was meaningless for him to roar crazily. The sky-devouring secret technique had crushed his consciousness. Soon after, the essence blood stopped resisting and was completely devoured, turning into Chu Fengmian's power. Good, the blood of a 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu is indeed pure. The blood of 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu was purer than the spiritual energy contained in many ancient sacred herbs and ancient sacred pills. Chu Fengmian had devoured it with the sky-devouring secret technique. The aura on his body had become even more tyrannical. This was Forefather Biluo's empty ring. Chu Fengmian watched as the heaven-devouring secret magic devoured everything that belonged to Patriarch Jade Conch. The only thing left behind was his spatial ring, which was a dazzling collection of treasures that almost blinded him. Ancient saint elixirs, ancient saint herbs, heaven-grade spiritual weapons, countless materials, and even many rare items that had disappeared from this era were all piled up in the empty ring. Just the number of ancient sacred elixir pills alone numbered in the hundreds. It was simply a huge fortune, no less than a treasure trove. It seemed like Ancestor Biluo had obtained a lot of benefits in the 9 regions and had accumulated countless treasures in his spatial ring. Now that Forefather Biluo had died at Chu Fengmian's hands, everything he had accumulated had gone to Chu Fengmian. Alright, let's kill a few more progenitor Biluo and I'll be able to convert more primordial battle dragon essence blood into dragon emperor essence blood. Chu Fengmian was extremely excited. In order to transform the primordial battle dragon blood essence into the dragon emperor blood essence, a large number of sacred elixirs and sacred elixirs would be required. For example, the bottle of martial progenitor blood essence could only refine 1,000 drops of it. It would take quite a lot of sacred herbs to refine a single drop. If Chu Fengmian were to accumulate it alone, it would be like pouring a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. Now that Chu Fengmian had killed Ancestor Biluo and obtained his spatial ring, it was equivalent to making a fortune. It was much faster than Chu Fengmian slowly searching for treasures. Moreover, it was not just the treasures in the spatial ring. Ancestor Biluo's essence blood was also extremely pure spiritual energy. In the heaven-devouring secret technique, Ancestor Biluo's essence blood had been completely refined. It no longer had Ancestor Biluo's aura or the smell of blood. Instead, it had become the purest spiritual energy crystals. They had turned into spiritual stones, but their spiritual energy was purer than that of a saint-grade spiritual stone. Chu Fengmian devoured all the spiritual energy crystals in one go. At the same time, he activated his bloodline power. The ancient battle dragon's shadow appeared behind Chu Fengmian. Now, Chu Fengmian wanted to increase his strength and refine the Dragon Emperor essence blood, which required a large amount of spiritual energy. After Chu Fengmian devoured the spiritual energy, it was devoured by the ancient battle dragon essence blood. Then, a drop of golden blood flew out. It contained countless formations. It was a drop of Dragon Emperor essence blood. The first drop, the second drop, the third drop. With sufficient spiritual energy, drops of Dragon Emperor essence blood were condensed. After 50 drops of Dragon Emperor essence blood were condensed, the power of Ancestor by Luo's essence blood was completely devoured. 50 drops were not much, but it was enough to increase Chu Fengmian's strength by a lot. After devouring all of Ancestor by Luo's essence and blood, Chu Fengmian's body moved slightly. He looked in the direction of the Five Elements Saber Master. The Five Elements Saber Master was already seriously injured. He wanted to escape, but the remnant of the Supreme Sword formation was not something he could withstand. He could only be trapped in this secret chamber. Chu Fengmian, let me go. If you let me go, I promise I won't be your enemy. I won't tell anyone about what happened today. The Five Elements Saber Grandmaster looked at Chu Fengmian and hurriedly said. As long as you let me go, I can help you hide what happened today from the three factions. Do you think I'll believe you? Chu Fengmian looked at the Five Elements Saber Grandmaster as if he was looking at an idiot. Regardless of whether the Five Elements Saber Grandmaster's words were true or not, Chu Fengmian had no intention of letting his enemy go. There was only one path for those who went against him, and that was death. Your essence blood will also become my strength. Chu Fengmian waved his hand and the sky-devouring secret techniques vortex immediately enveloped the Five Elements Saber Grandmaster. Boy, do you really think you're invincible? If you kill me, you'll be buried with me. There are half-step celestial realm experts in the Avalon of Five Elements. You'll accompany me sooner or later. The Five Elements Saber Grandmaster knew that he was going to die, but he did not beg for mercy. He shouted at Chu Fengmian, I'll wait for the day you die. You talk too much. Chu Fengmian snorted coldly. He clenched his hand and crushed the Five Elements Saber Grandmaster. A ball of essence blood was injected into the sky-devouring secret technique and was mercilessly devoured. The essence blood of the Five Elements Saber Grandmaster was completely converted into pure spiritual energy and became a part of Chu Fengmian's strength. Another 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu fell on the spot. On the other side, the battle between Emperor Yan and King Sunflower Ocean was also coming to an end. King Sunflower Ocean had burned 500 strands of the laws of heaven and earth in order to break the Supreme Sword formation. As a result, he was now incomparably weak. He was suppressed in all aspects during the battle with Emperor Yan. His physical body had already been destroyed 3 times. For Emperor Gu of the 9 Tribulations, even if his physical body was destroyed, he could still reform it in an instant. However, every time he reformed it, he would lose a certain amount of energy, and the next time he reformed it, he would lose even more energy. One after another, King Sunflower Ocean's strength became weaker and weaker. Finally, at the 4th time, his physical body was destroyed. King Sunflower Ocean did not dare to continue the battle with Emperor Yan. He turned into a ray of light and fled. Chapter 1578. But the Yan Emperor wouldn't give him the chance. A ring on his finger flickered and turned into a river of stars, pressing down on King Sunflower Sea. This ring was the opportunity the Yan Emperor obtained from the 9 mystic immortal sovereigns' abode. Although it wasn't the real 9 profound ring, it was still something the 9 mystic immortal sovereign personally refined. It was at the pinnacle of heaven-grade spirit artifacts. As the river of stars fell, King Sunflower Sea's body was suppressed within the river of stars. His strength was constantly being ground away until his consciousness finally faded away. The Yan Emperor immediately devoured all of his essence blood. Forefather by Luo, 5 Elements Saber Grandmaster, King Sunflower Sea, 3 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. Now, all of them had fallen in this secret chamber. Although several 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu had died in the 9 realms during the upheaval in the 9 realms, the 3 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu had died. But now, 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu had fallen at the same time. It was an earth-shattering event that would soon spread throughout the 9 realms. Let's go. Chu Fengmian glanced at the Yan Emperor and said. 2 figures flickered, passing through the light screen and leaving the abode. Not long after, another 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu arrived. He frowned as he observed the stench of blood in the surroundings. Forefather Bai Luo called out. Where did he go? The 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu observed for a moment, then suddenly gathered spiritual energy in his palm and struck forward. The spiritual energy began to condense in front of the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu and turned into a water mirror. The water mirror was extremely blurry, but it was enough to vaguely show the scene of someone killing Forefather Bai Luo. Who is this person? How can he be so strong? Was Forefather Bai Luo killed by this person? The 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu said in disbelief as he watched the scene of Forefather Bai Luo's death in the water mirror. Forefather Bai Luo was a long-established 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. He was by no means weak, but he was killed just like that. What happened next left him dumbfounded. It wasn't just Ancestor Bai Luo. In the next moment, the 5 Elements Saber Grandmaster was killed as well. Emperor Gu of the 9 Tribulations could see that the 5 Elements Saber Master had been forced into a desperate situation and was seriously injured. Next, the scene of King Sunflower Ocean's death appeared. He only killed the figures of the 3 people. It's the Yan Emperor? Emperor Gu of the 9 Tribulations couldn't help but frown. He recognized the person who had killed King Sunflower Sea. It was Emperor Yan. Although the Yan Emperor did not belong to the 3 major factions, he had a good relationship with them. Who would have thought that the Yan Emperor would kill King Sunflower Ocean? As for the person who had killed Forefather Jade Conch and 5 Elements Saber Grandmaster, he couldn't immediately recognize him. Let's go and spread the news. The fact that this person is using the Dragon Clan's martial skill is definitely related to the Holy Dragon Mystery Dimension. Emperor Gu of the 9 Tribulations said in a deep voice. Soon after, he turned into a ray of light and left the light screen. On the other side, in a valley on the Crimson Continent, Chu Fengmian and the Yan Emperor were sitting cross-legged. Chu Fengmian and the Yan Emperor had joined forces to set up countless restrictions in the valley. As a result, other experts couldn't detect the presence of others in the valley. As for Chu Fengmian and the Yan Emperor, their eyes were tightly shut. Their auras were growing bit by bit. Chu Fengmian was refining the essence blood of the 5 Elements Saber Grandmaster. The Yan Emperor was also refining the essence blood of King Sunflower Ocean. The essence blood of Emperor Gu of the 9 Tribulations was a perfect treasure that could be used to increase one's strength. The power in the essence blood of the 5 Elements Saber Grandmaster was even greater than that of Forefather Jade Conch. Chu Fengmian slowly refined it. A large amount of spiritual energy poured into Chu Fengmian's body. Immediately after, the shadow of the ancient war dragon appeared behind Chu Fengmian. Like a living ancient war dragon, it opened its mouth and continuously devoured the spiritual energy. Waves of spiritual energy were devoured by the ancient war dragon essence blood and transformed bit by bit. At the moment when the essence blood of the 5 Elements Saber Grandmaster was completely refined, the Dragon Emperor essence blood in Chu Fengmian's body had reached a total of 1,100 drops. Not bad. The essence blood of these 2 people is almost 1/10 of the martial ancestor's essence blood. Chu Fengmian slowly raised his head. There was some joy in his eyes. Now, as long as he could convert the ancient war dragon essence blood in his body into the Dragon Emperor essence blood, Chu Fengmian's strength would continue to increase. Currently, Chu Fengmian's realm was only that of the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu. If he could find an opportunity to break through to the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, Chu Fengmian's strength would increase by another step. When he faced the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, even if it was 1 against 3 or 4, Chu Fengmian would be able to defeat them. The moment Chu Fengmian opened his eyes, the Yan Emperor had also finished devouring the essence blood of the King of Sunflower Ocean. His aura had also become much stronger. The Yan Emperor had just stepped into the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu and needed to consolidate his realm. The essence blood of the King of Sunflower Ocean was a great supplement for him to consolidate his realm. I didn't expect Brother Chu's strength to be so powerful. This time, I owe Brother Chu a favor. The Yan Emperor opened his eyes and glanced at Chu Fengmian with a smile. This time, he had obtained great benefits from killing the King of Sunflower Ocean. The benefits of killing a Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu were no less than the benefits of risking one's life to obtain a treasure in the Crimson Continent. This time, if Chu Fengmian hadn't forced the three into a desperate situation, the Yan Emperor wouldn't have been able to kill the King of Sunflower Ocean so easily. After all, although the Yan Emperor had the Nine Profound Ring, he had just broken through to the Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. In terms of strength, he was still inferior to the King of Sunflower Ocean. With the Nine Profound Ring, the most he could do was draw. The only reason he could kill the King of Sunflower Ocean was because the King of Sunflower Ocean had been forced into a desperate situation and was incomparably weak. It's not a favor. If the Yan Emperor hadn't come this time, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to kill the other two. Chu Fengmian heard the Yan Emperor's words and smiled. This time, the Yan Emperor dared to come at the right time. If not for the Yan Emperor, perhaps the three of them would have escaped. At that time, Chu Fengmian wouldn't have been able to get any benefits. Although the Yan Emperor didn't seem to have done much, he was the last straw that broke the camel's back. But this time, the Yan Emperor didn't come in vain. He killed the King of Sunflower Ocean and obtained the King of Sunflower Ocean's essence blood as well as the treasures in his empty ring. Of course, Chu Fengmian's gains were even greater. The essence blood of the Five Elements Saber Master and Forefather Bai Luo, as well as their empty rings, were now in his hands. Chapter 1579. Their empty rings were filled with countless treasures they had obtained from the 9 regions. Although many of the items were not useful to warriors at Chu Fengmian's level, Chu Fengmian could still use them to cultivate the Sword Wei sect. If Chu Fengmian wanted to establish the Sword Wei sect, he naturally could not support it alone. It had to be developed. Just like the 7 major sects, or even the 4 major forces of the Daluo star field, even if a 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu or a half-step Celestial Realm expert fell, it would not be a big deal. Only such a force could continue to be passed down for tens of thousands of years. Brother Chu saved my disciple's life. This is a favor. However, I owe Brother Chu too much. I can only repay it in the future. Emperor Yan glanced at Chu Fengmian and said with a smile in his eyes. The biggest reason why Emperor Yan could break through and step into the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu was because Chu Fengmian gave him a Saint Origin pill through Qing Meng. Emperor Yan naturally knew about this Saint Origin pill. Chu Fengmian must have asked Qing Meng to give it to him. Although Chu Fengmian wanted to rope in Emperor Yan had not done anything yet, and Chu Fengmian had already given him a Saint Origin pill. This was a great benefit. This was a great favor. It also made Emperor Yan stand firmly on Chu Fengmian's side. Even if he was facing Emperor Gu of the other 3 major forces, he did not have any scruples in directly attacked. Of course, what made Emperor Yan most determined was Chu Fengmian's strength. Chu Fengmian's speed of improvement was beyond his imagination. When he first saw Chu Fengmian's strength was enough to compete with the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu. But now, in less than a month's time, Chu Fengmian's strength had improved by leaps and bounds. When facing the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, he had the upper hand. With such a rapid improvement in strength, Chu Fengmian might even step into the half-step Celestial Realm in the future. There was even a great chance that he would step into the Celestial Realm. In the current era, it had been at least several hundred years since anyone had been able to step into the Celestial Realm. There were indeed some experts who were half a step into the Celestial Realm, but there was no news about the real Celestial Realm. Emperor Yan, I'm afraid your Yanzhou continent will be in great danger this time. Chu Fengmian glanced at the Yan Emperor and suddenly spoke. This time, the Yan Emperor had killed King Sunflower Ocean. This news couldn't be concealed at all. With a slight calculation, it would probably be known by the other 3 great forces. At that time, it would not be easy for the three forces to find trouble with the Yan Emperor. However, the Yanzhou continent, where the Yan Emperor was, would also be destroyed. Chu Fengmian reminded the Yan Emperor. Brother Chu, rest assured. I have already sent my 2 disciples back to the Yanzhou continent. The Yan Emperor smiled when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. I heard that Brother Chu has established a Sword Dao sect in the 9 regions. Can the disciples of the Yanzhou continent join it? Emperor Yan wants to join the Sword Dao sect? Chu Fengmian was overjoyed when he heard the Yan Emperor's words. Not bad. The Yan Emperor nodded and said. Now that he had chosen to stand on Chu Fengmian's side, he could no longer maintain his independence. The Sword Dao sect was now a new sect established by Chu Fengmian. It had no foundation. Once the Yan Emperor joined, he would definitely be in the upper echelon and have a prominent status. In the future, if Chu Fengmian really stepped into the half-step celestial realm, the Sword Dao sect would probably rise as well. God knows how many Emperor Gu would come to join the Sword Dao sect. The Yan Emperor came to join the Sword Dao sect because he had foresight. In the future, when Chu Fengmian became the overlord, he would definitely be a contributor. Good. Of course, I welcome the Yan Emperor to join. As long as you are a disciple of the Yanzhou continent, you will be a disciple of the Sword Dao sect. Chu Fengmian immediately agreed. It was definitely a good thing for the Yan Emperor and the Yanzhou continent to join the Sword Dao sect. Now that the Sword Dao sect had just been established, although there was a sect master like Chu Fengmian, the sect's strength was still too weak. Not to mention the 7 major sects of the 9 regions, even many of the first-rate forces and ancient families in the 9 regions were more tyrannical than the Sword Dao sect. Although the Yanzhou continent was only a 6th-class continent, it had a population of billions. The number of geniuses in the continent was many times more than the total number of geniuses in the northern region. With so many geniuses joining the Sword Dao sect, coupled with the countless cultivation techniques left behind by Chu Fengmian, the Sword Dao sect would not be long gone. It wouldn't be long before the Sword Dao sect rose to power and was not inferior to the 7 major sections. It might even surpass the 4 major forces of the Daluo star field in the future. This time, I must get a few more large-scale treasures in the Crimson Continent. Chu Fengmian arranged everything in his mind. His face was a little dignified. The core of the Sword Dao sect was Chu Fengmian. Once Chu Fengmian fell, the Sword Dao sect would collapse. What Chu Fengmian needed to do now was to increase his strength. Only with enough strength could he contend with the 7 major sects, the Avalon of 5 elements, the vast ocean city, and the Qilin mountain. Moreover, there were many higher-ups in the Sacred Dragon secret realm who were extremely hostile to Chu Fengmian, such as Emperor Gu. Once they came out of seclusion, they would definitely come to deal with Chu Fengmian. Taking advantage of the opening of countless treasures in the Crimson Continent, Chu Fengmian had to get a few more large-scale treasures to increase his strength. The benefits he gained from the Lion Tyrant Martial Ancestors' cave abode also made Chu Fengmian realize how great the opportunities were in this large-scale treasure trove. It was no wonder that countless Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations went crazy when they came across a large-scale treasure trove. They wanted to fight and kill for it. By the way, Brother Chu, do you know about the recent appearance of an extreme immortal weapon in the Crimson Continent? The Yan Emperor suddenly glanced at Chu Fengmian and asked. News of the appearance of an extreme immortal weapon? What's going on? Chu Fengmian was extremely excited when he heard the Yan Emperor's words, but his expression did not change. The appearance of an extreme immortal weapon was also the reason why so many experts had come to the 9 domains in the first place. Chu Fengmian also knew that the extreme immortal weapon was the fragment of the Emperor Jar. Among the people Chu Fengmian had met previously, Yin Jun had obtained a fragment of the Emperor Jar. He had also been attracted by the impending appearance of the fragment of the Emperor Jar in the 9 domains. Obtaining just one fragment of the Emperor Jar would be enough to increase the power of the Emperor Jar in Chu Fengmian's hands by countless times. Chu Fengmian already had 5 fragments of the Emperor Jar. If he could obtain 4 more fragments, he would be able to restore the Emperor Jar to its original state. With a complete extreme immortal weapon, Chu Fengmian would be able to sweep through everything. It seems that Brother Chu still doesn't know that almost all the experts in the Crimson Continent and the entire bottomless ruined sky have been attracted by a huge treasure trove. The Yan Emperor spoke again while Chu Fengmian was thinking. Chapter 1580. A gigantic treasure? Chu Fengmian was a little surprised when he heard Emperor Yan's words. In this Crimson Continent, many of the so-called large treasures were the remains of ancient sects or treasures left behind by Heaven Realm powerhouses like Martial Ancestor Tyrannical Lion. But this gigantic treasure, could it be a Heaven Realm cave dwelling? No, even a Heaven Realm cave dwelling shouldn't cause such a huge commotion. Chu Fengmian was a little puzzled. All the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu of the Crimson Continent had gathered here to fight for this treasure. What kind of person did this treasure belong to? Brother Chu, this isn't the place to talk. Let's walk and I'll tell you about this treasure. Emperor Yan glanced at Chu Fengmian and didn't explain. Instead, there was a hint of anxiety in his eyes. Miss Qing Meng has also gone. She should have arrived by now. Senior sister has also come to the 9 territories? Chu Fengmian was a little surprised when he heard Emperor Yan's words. It seemed that the upheaval of the 9 territories had indeed spread throughout the entire Daluo star field. Qing Meng couldn't help but come. Let's go. His figure flashed and turned into a streak of light that flew directly into the sky. Chu Fengmian also knew that the opening of the treasure couldn't be delayed. He had to seize the opportunity before the treasure was opened to obtain the greatest benefits. For example, Martial Ancestor Tyrannical Lion's cave dwelling. Because Chu Fengmian had seized the opportunity, he had obtained the greatest harvest. 2 streaks of light shuttled through the Crimson Continent. This time, Chu Fengmian also noticed that the number of cultivators on the Crimson Continent seemed to have decreased by a lot. And the few streaks of light that passed by were flying in the same direction as Chu Fengmian. They seemed to be heading to the same destination. In this Crimson Continent, a total of 90% of the cultivators and demon gods seemed to be gathering in one place. Brother Chu, do you know about the 9th Order Immortal? Emperor Yan, who was leading the way, suddenly turned his head and asked Chu Fengmian. I know. Chu Fengmian nodded. The 9th Order Immortal was recorded in many ancient books. Although there were no Heaven Realm powerhouses in this era, some ancient books read it. However, many people still knew about this from ancient books. Although Chu Fengmian was powerful, he had only stepped into the Emperor realm less than a year ago. So, he didn't know many secrets that he didn't know. An emperor had been famous for a long time, so he knew more than Chu Fengmian Emperor of him. The treasure vault that is about to be opened is said to be the cave of an immortal emperor. It's also the place where that immortal emperor died. The Yan Emperor suddenly said a shocking piece of news. Immortal Emperor's cave dwelling? The Immortal's Emperor's dwelling? Emperor Yan's Emperor Emperor. Even in the most prosperous era, immortal emperors were absolute overlords. What was about to be opened was actually an immortal emperor's cave. Moreover, it was the place where an immortal emperor had fallen. An immortal emperor was in existence that could crush the current 9 domains with a wave of his finger. Chu Fengmian asked in disbelief. The news was so shocking that Chu Fengmian couldn't believe it. Most of the news is true. Even if it's not the Immortal's Emperor Yan's dwelling, the treasure is bigger than any of the treasures opened in the End Ruins Heaven. Emperor Yan replied. Emperor Yan had only heard of the Immortal's Emperor Yan's Emperor Yan. Heaven Realm powerhouses were beyond their reach. Not to mention the Immortal Emperor, who stood at the top of the Immortals. However, judging from the might of this treasure trove that was about to be opened, it was definitely the largest treasure trove to be opened since the upheaval in the 9 regions. Even if it wasn't the Immortal's Emperor Yan's dwelling, such a treasure was worth fighting for. If it's really the Immortal's Emperor Yan, whoever can get the treasure inside will reach the sky in a single bound. Chu Fengmian muttered to himself. The Immortal's Emperor Yan's dwelling. He might even have the Immortal's Emperor Yan's spirit artifact with him. The Immortal's Emperor Yan's spirit artifact and Immortal Emperor Yan's spirit artifact were all priceless treasures. For example, Chu Fengmian had obtained the bronze heavenly demon skeleton, which was enough to cultivate a half-step immortal body. The bronze heavenly demon was also an immortal emperor, or rather, a demon emperor. If one could obtain the immortal emperor's skeleton, the benefits would be no less than the bronze heavenly demon skeleton. Moreover, even something casually left behind by an immortal emperor was enough to drive countless Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu crazy. It's easier said than done to obtain the immortal emperor's treasure. I'm afraid there are more than 100 Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu this time. Emperor Yan shook his head at Chu Fengmian's words. All the Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu in the End Ruins Heaven had rushed over for the Immortal's Cave. Each faction had a dozen Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. In comparison, Chu Fengmian's faction was still too weak. Even if he included Qing Meng, there were only 3 Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. 3 Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu were considered a powerful faction even in the Daluo star field. However, compared to the Avalon of 5 elements in Qi Linshan, 3 Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu were not enough. It was even possible that a half-step Celestial Realm expert would be involved this time. A half-step Celestial Realm expert was a completely different realm from the Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. He was already half a step into the Celestial Realm and was invincible. It's already a great opportunity if we can get 1 or 2 benefits from it this time, Emperor Yan said. Emperor Yan said. He was not greedy. If it's really the Immortal Emperor's Cave, then no matter what, I have to give it a try. Chu Fengmian's eyes flashed with a hint of determination. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian was taken aback. His expression shook as a strange light flashed in his eyes. Within his body, a spiritual artifact had been awakened. The Emperor Jar. The Emperor Jar, which had been hidden in Chu Fengmian's body all this time, had been awakened. It was pointing Chu Fengmian in a certain direction. The fragments of the Emperor Jar have appeared. Chu Fengmian was suddenly excited. He had returned to the 9 regions for one reason, to continue searching for the fragments of the Emperor Jar. Of the 9 fragments of the Emperor Jar, Chu Fengmian had obtained 5 of them. The last 4 fragments would be enough to reshape the Emperor Jar. By then, Chu Fengmian would have a true ultimate immortal weapon in his hands. Chapter 1581. Although the Emperor Jar was now incomplete, it had always been Chu Fengmian's most important trump card. With the help of the Emperor Jar, Chu Fengmian had resolved countless dangers. Although the news of the emergence of an extreme immortal artifact fragment had long spread throughout the Daluo star field, Chu Fengmian had never discovered it. The fragments of the Emperor Jar would attract each other. Now, the Emperor Jar in Chu Fengmian's body had suddenly awakened and guided Chu Fengmian. This also meant that Chu Fengmian could find the fragment of the Emperor Jar with this guidance. In the direction that the Emperor Jar was pointing, Chu Fengmian raised his head and looked in the direction that it was pointing. It was the direction that Chu Fengmian had to go. Could it be that the fragment of the Emperor Jar is in the Immortal Emperor Cave? Chu Fengmian was surprised. The direction was too coincidental. There shouldn't be such a coincidence. Chu Fengmian didn't find it strange that the fragment of the Emperor Jar was hidden in the Immortal Emperor Cave. After all, Chu Fengmian had once obtained one of the fragments of the Emperor Jar in the House of Storms. The House of Storms was the cave left behind by the immortal Venerable Kanglin, and there was a fragment of the Emperor Jar in his cave. The owner of the Immortal Emperor Cave had once obtained a fragment of the Emperor Jar and put it in the cave. It was very likely. It seems that I have to go into the Immortal Emperor Cave. Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered. It wasn't just because of the Immortal Emperor's treasure, but also because of the fragment of the Emperor Jar. It was worth the risk. The Immortal Emperor Cave was located in the center of the Crimson Continent. Chu Fengmian and Emperor Yan shuttled through the Crimson Continent. Soon, a dazzling 7-colored light shot into the sky. Chu Fengmian could still see the seven-colored sunglow clearly even though it was 2,000 miles away from him. He could even feel the surging spiritual power contained in the seven-colored light. A seven-colored light that covers 2,000 miles. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but exclaim when he saw the seven-colored light. In this crimson continent, all the treasures that were open would appear along with the light. The larger the range of the light, the more precious the treasures were. A treasure trove that could cover an area of 50 kilometers in rainbow light was enough to be called a large treasure trove. For example, when the lion tyrant martial ancestors' cave was opened, the seven-colored light that appeared was enough to cover an area of 100 miles. All the cultivators within 50 kilometers could clearly see the seven-colored light. The light in front of them was actually 2,000 kilometers long. As expected of an immortal emperor's abode. Even if this treasure trove wasn't an immortal emperor immortal cave, it wasn't far from it. Let's go over there. The Yan Emperor glanced at it, then flew towards the center of the rainbow light. As Chu Fengmian approached the rainbow-colored light, he felt countless powerful auras. Waves of heaven and earth power soared into the sky. This uncontrollable power of heaven and earth was the power of the Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. In a short moment, Chu Fengmian discovered 7 or 8 Emperor Gu scattered in the vicinity. They weren't even close to the center. As for the 7 Tribulations Emperor Gu, 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu, and even true emperors, they were everywhere. Chu Fengmian could see hundreds of them at a glance. This was only a small portion. The closer they got to the center of the seven-colored light, the more Chu Fengmian sensed the experts. How many experts have come to the 9 domains this time? Chu Fengmian exclaimed in his heart. Although Emperor Gu wasn't rare in the Daluo star field, it was rare for several Emperor Gu to appear together. But now, Chu Fengmian sensed that there were more than 100 Emperor Gu. If he hadn't come here, Chu Fengmian wouldn't have believed that so many Emperor Gu had come to the 9 domains. At the same time, Chu Fengmian secretly rejoiced that the goal of these Emperor Gu was the treasure in the Omega Ruins Heaven, and not the other 9 domains. Otherwise, with so many Emperor Gu, the 9 domains would be turned upside down. Even the 7 major sects of the 9 domains wouldn't be able to withstand the impact of so many Emperor Gu. There should be a few hundred Emperor Gu in the Daluo star field, and at least half of them belong to the 4 major sections. However, the ancient emperors of the Daluo star domain are not the only ones who have come to the 9 domains. The ancient emperors of the nearby Yanluo star domain, Myriad Dragon star domain, Floating Mountain star domain, and even the ancient Pure Land star domain have all come to the 9 domains to compete for the treasures. The Yan Emperor saw the doubt in Chu Fengmian's eyes and explained. The experts of the Pure Land star field had come? Chu Fengmian remembered that the Pure Land star field was the legendary star field where all the Buddhas lived. Buddhism had once flourished in the 9 domains. At that time, the Pure Land sect, a major sect in the 9 domains, was said to have come from the distant Pure Land star field. But later, the Pure Land sect was destroyed, and Buddhism was destroyed as well. Chu Fengmian had only read about Buddhism in ancient books. Buddhism was extremely mysterious, and there were very few records of it in that era. But in the ancient books, the records of Buddhism were very cautious. It was said that Buddhism trespassed and bewitched people's hearts. Many experts in that era had been converted by Buddhism experts and subdued by Buddhism. If he really encountered experts from the Pure Land star field, Chu Fengmian had to be careful. Chu Fengmian and the Yan Emperor flew all the way and gradually came to the center of the 7-colored light. With the Yan Emperor, the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, by their side, no one would find trouble with them. The fight between the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu was extremely dangerous. If it was not for the treasure, no one would be willing to fight with a 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. Chu Fengmian and the Yan Emperor went all the way and gradually saw that there was a huge door right below the 7-colored light. This Buddhist temple was supported by 100 white jade pillars. Each pillar was 1,000 feet tall and carved with ancient restrictions. The carvings of the restrictions looked like scriptures. Buddhist temple? It was actually a Buddhist temple? Could it be an expert of the ancient Pure Land sect? Could it be that a Buddhist ancestor was born in the Pure Land sect? It was said that the pinnacle of Buddhism was the Buddhist ancestor. The Buddhist ancestor's strength was enough to be on the same level as the immortal emperor. If it was really a Buddhist temple, then the treasures inside would not be inferior to the immortal emperor cave mansion. Chapter 1582. The door of the Buddhist temple was still closed. It was not the time to open yet. However, as the rainbow light in the sky became more and more dazzling, Chu Fengmian knew that when the rainbow light reached its peak, the Buddhist temple would open. Countless experts were waiting for the opening of the Buddhist temple. No one wanted to start a conflict at this time. If they started a conflict at this time, it would be equivalent to giving up the fight for the treasures in the Buddhist temple. Even Emperor Gu, who had a blood feud with many people, could only wait calmly. Chu Fengmian and Emperor Yan were looking for Qing Meng. Suddenly, a voice appeared in Chu Fengmian's mind. Someone was transmitting a message to him. It was a secret sound transmission technique. Chu Fengmian had never seen it before. The voice belonged to a young lady. Chu Fengmian found the voice familiar. There was only one sentence in the voice. "Come and meet me quickly." Immediately, a place 100 miles away appeared in Chu Fengmian's mind. Chu Fengmian was surprised. He did not expect something like this to happen. He thought for a while and said, "Emperor Yan, wait here for me." "Yan Emperor, wait for me here for a while. I need to go somewhere first." "Okay. Be careful." Emperor Yan nodded and did not ask any more questions. Chu Fengmian immediately turned into a ray of light. He hid his body and appeared 100 miles away. At first glance, the place 100 miles away was just a desert. However, as Chu Fengmian got closer, the world suddenly turned upside down. Illusion. Someone had set up such an illusion in the desert. Outsiders were unable to see into it. Only those who had obtained permission were qualified to enter it. Stepping into the illusion, Chu Fengmian saw a boundless blue ocean. There was a small island in the middle of the ocean. On this island, there was a stone pavilion. Within the stone pavilion, the figure of a young lady stood there. Chu Fengmian looked around. In a flash, he crossed the ocean and stepped into the stone pavilion. "May I know why the Princess of the Sea is looking for me?" Chu Fengmian came to the stone pavilion and asked. The person who had suddenly come to look for Chu Fengmian was none other than the Princess of the Sea, who had traveled with Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi in the caravan of the Tiandu continent. She was later rescued by Chu Fengmian. At that time, the three forces had not completely fallen out with Chu Fengmian, and Chu Fengmian was not willing to kill the innocent. But now, Chu Fengmian was a thorn in the side of the three great powers, and they couldn't wait to kill him on the spot. Chu Fengmian didn't expect the Princess of the Sea to come looking for him at this time. "Hurry up and leave the 9 zones. The people of the three great forces want to kill you." The Princess of the Sea went straight to the point when she saw Chu Fengmian. Right now, the three great factions have already issued a kill order. All the Holy Dragon sect disciples in the Sacred Dragon Secret Dimension are on the must-kill list. You still have time to leave now. I know about this. Chu Fengmian was stunned when he heard the Princess of the Sea's words. Of course, Chu Fengmian knew that the three major powers wanted to kill him. He had been assassinated countless times. But Chu Fengmian didn't expect the Princess of the Sea to tell him about this. "Then do you know that the three great forces have already invited a half-step to Celestial Realm expert to kill you?" The Princess of the Sea asked again when she heard Chu Fengmian's words. "Half-step to Celestial Realm?" Chu Fengmian's expression changed when he heard the Princess of the Sea's words. With Chu Fengmian's current strength, he wasn't afraid of the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. But a half-step to Celestial Realm expert. Unless Chu Fengmian stepped into the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, a half-step to Celestial Realm expert wasn't someone Chu Fengmian could contend with. It was rumored that there were half-step to Celestial Realm experts in the Daluo star field among the 4 major powers. But experts of this level might not appear in the world for thousands of years. he didn't expect the three great forces to invite a half-step to Celestial Realm expert to kill Chu Fengmian. It seemed like the three great forces couldn't tolerate Chu Fengmian's growth and wanted to kill him completely. Who is it? Chu Fengmian couldn't help but ask. It's the Five Elements Saber Saint from the Avalon of Five Elements. The Five Elements Saber Grandmaster that you killed was his disciple. The Princess of the Sea said slowly. She knew clearly that Chu Fengmian had killed the Five Elements Saber Grandmaster, ancestor by Luo, and the others. With the means of the three great forces, they could easily find out everything. The Five Elements Saber Saint, Chu Fengmian had heard of this person in some records in the Holy Dragon Mystery Dimension. It was said that he was one of the oldest elders in the Avalon of Five Elements. He hadn't appeared in the Daluo star field for tens of thousands of years. In many records, it was speculated that the Five Elements Saber Saint had fallen. But now, it seemed like the Five Elements Saber Saint didn't fall. Instead, his strength had improved and reached the half-step to Celestial Realm. If the Five Elements Saber Saint really came to kill Chu Fengmian, it would be extremely troublesome. Why are you telling me this? Chu Fengmian suddenly looked at the Princess of the Sea and asked. He and the Princess of the Sea should be enemies. After all, Chu Fengmian had killed many disciples of the Sea Capital with his own hands. Although King Sunflower Sea wasn't killed by Chu Fengmian personally, but by Emperor Yan's hands, Chu Fengmian had contributed to it. I, Lan Ling, will repay a debt of gratitude. You saved my life last time, so I'm returning it to you this time. After the Princess of the Sea finished speaking, her figure flickered as she prepared to leave. Thank you. Chu Fengmian nodded. The news that the Five Elements Saber Saint was going to deal with Chu Fengmian was probably a great secret among the three great forces. Even Emperor Gu might not be qualified to know about it. This time, the Princess of the Sea was taking a big risk by telling Chu Fengmian about it. Tell your father's people that they won't be my enemy in the future. When I destroy the Sea Capital, I'll spare their lives. Chu Fengmian suddenly said. His figure flickered as he soared into the sky and prepared to leave. The Princess of the Sea turned around and heard Chu Fengmian's words. She frowned. You can't even protect yourself, yet you're still boasting. Just as Chu Fengmian was about to leave, another voice suddenly rang out. Be careful when the temple opens. After the Princess of the Sea finished speaking, her figure flickered as she left the illusion and disappeared without a trace. At the same time, Chu Fengmian's figure flickered as he left the illusion. He was thinking about the Princess of the Sea's last words. Chapter 1583. Be careful when the temple opens? Could it be that the Five Elements Saber Saint was planning to launch a sneak attack at that time? Chu Fengmian suddenly thought of this when he heard the Princess of the Sea. Since the Princess of the Sea dared to take the risk to inform the three forces that she was going to deal with Chu Fengmian, she would not lie. However, the Five Elements Saber Saint was a half-step to the Celestial Realm. A half-step to the Celestial Realm was a famous expert recorded in the ancient books. Even if he died in the future, his name would still be recorded in the ancient books. It was enough to be passed down for eternity. A half-step to the Celestial Realm expert would launch a sneak attack. Even with his dignity, he might not be able to do so. On the other hand, if the Five Elements Saber Saint really launched a sneak attack on Chu Fengmian, it would be extremely dangerous. When the temple opened, all the experts present would focus their attention on the temple. A sneak attack at this time would definitely catch Chu Fengmian off guard. Especially since the Five Elements Saber Saint was a half-step to the Celestial Realm expert, Chu Fengmian could not compete with him. If he launched a sneak attack, Chu Fengmian might not even be able to react in time and would be killed. Although a half-step to the Celestial Realm expert had high self-esteem, Chu Fengmian's growth rate had already made the three forces want to kill him. Especially since Chu Fengmian had killed the Five Elements Saber Grandmaster, the disciple of the Five Elements Saber Saint. Perhaps the Five Elements Saber Saint would launch a sneak attack on Chu Fengmian in order to kill him in one blow. No matter what, I have to be prepared. Chu Fengmian revealed a somewhat grim expression. Regardless of whether or not the Five Elements Saber Saint would launch a sneak attack on Chu Fengmian, he was still a half-step celestial being. Naturally, Chu Fengmian could not underestimate him. Chu Fengmian pondered as he flew towards the center of the seven-colored light. "Brother Chu, you are back." Emperor Yan was still waiting for Chu Fengmian at the same place. When he saw Chu Fengmian flying over, he relaxed a lot. He was worried that Chu Fengmian would encounter an accident after leaving suddenly. There were many experts in the Crimson Red Continent. The three forces saw Chu Fengmian as a thorn in their flesh. If Chu Fengmian was alone, he would be in great danger. "Where is Senior?" Chu Fengmian flew over and glanced around. "Over there." The Yan Emperor pointed in a direction. Chu Fengmian and the Yan Emperor flew all the way until they were less than 10 li away from the Buddhist temple. On a mountain peak not far from the temple, a woman was standing at the peak. She was dressed in green and occupied the entire mountain peak. One had to know that once a Buddhist temple was opened, the closer one was to the Buddhist temple, the higher the chance of entering it first. Within 100 miles, there were hundreds of Emperor Gu gathered here. Even though it was so crowded, the woman was able to occupy an entire mountain peak. No one dared to step into the vicinity of the mountain peak. This was because all the cultivators present could clearly feel the terrifying power of the woman in green. The surging power of the world proved her identity. A Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. No one would be willing to provoke a Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu, so much so that no one dared to snatch the entire mountain peak from her. "Junior brother, Emperor Yan, you're here." The woman in green had her eyes tightly closed. Suddenly, she opened her eyes and looked ahead. She shouted happily when she saw two rays of light approaching. "Third Senior." Chu Fengmian replied with a smile. Seeing Qing Meng's cultivation level, Chu Fengmian knew that Qing Meng had successfully entered the realm of Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu through the Ancestor Emperor Pill. In this way, Chu Fengmian had 3 Emperor Gu of the Nine Tribulations on his side. With such strength, even if some major factions wanted to deal with Chu Fengmian, the 3 of them would still be a far cry from the Five Elements Saber Saint. "Is Second Senior not here?" Chu Fengmian took a look and saw that Qing Meng was alone. He immediately asked. Long Qianjua's strength was not that of a half-step celestial being, but it was very close. If he was here, even the Five Elements Saber Saint could easily deal with him. But now, it seemed that Long Qianjua did not come to the 9 regions with Qing Meng. Second Senior is in seclusion in the Holy Dragon Sect. He did not come. Qing Meng saw the change in Chu Fengmian's expression and suddenly came closer. She whispered to Chu Fengmian. "Junior, what trouble have you encountered?" "Yes." Chu Fengmian nodded. In front of Qing Meng and Emperor Yan, Chu Fengmian did not have to hide anything. Moreover, it was impossible for Chu Fengmian to deal with the Five Elements Saber Saint alone. He would only be courting death. If he wanted to escape from the Five Elements Saber Saint, he would have to join forces with Qing Meng and Emperor Yan. "Let's talk here." Chu Fengmian quietly used his means. The Door of Dharma and the ancient bronze gate appeared from Chu Fengmian's body. Soon after, Chu Fengmian set up countless seals and created an independent space above the mountain. Boom! 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 In this independent space, even Emperor Gu of the 9 Tribulations could not detect the mystery within. "Junior, what happened?" Qing Meng was also shocked by Chu Fengmian's attack. Then, her eyes became serious. Given Chu Fengmian's character, he was actually so cautious. What he wanted to talk about must be very important. "It's like this," Chu Fengmian repeated what the Princess of the Sea had told him. However, he did not mention that the Princess of the Sea was the one who told him. Qing Meng and the Yan Emperor listened carefully. When they heard about the Five Elements Saber Saint, their faces changed drastically. The Five Elements Saber Saint was one of the oldest patriarchs in the Avalon of 5 Elements. His name was well known in the Daluo star field. When they heard that a half-step celestial realm expert wanted to deal with Chu Fengmian, their eyes were filled with shock. They looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Especially the five-element Saber Saint, who had actually disregarded his status to launch a sneak attack on Chu Fengmian. It seemed that the three major forces were determined to kill Chu Fengmian. They had invited the five-element Saber Saint to deal with Chu Fengmian. They were prepared to kill Chu Fengmian with a single blow and not give him any chance to retaliate. This is no small matter. I'll inform second senior brother now and ask him to come here. Qing Meng said with a serious face. It's too late. The moment the Buddhist temple opens is the moment the five elements Saber Saint launches a sneak attack. Chu Fengmian shook his head when he heard Qing Meng's words. In Chu Fengmian's opinion, the Buddhist temple before him would open in at most a day. Long Qinjue was still in the sacred dragon mystery dimension. Even though he was a half-step celestial realm expert, it would be difficult for him to rush to the 9 regions within a day. Chapter 1584. It would be too late to ask Long Qinjue to come now. Unless Chu Fengmian gave up on the treasures in the temple and left, the five elements Saber Saint's sneak attack plan would fail. However, Chu Fengmian could not give up the temple. The Emperor Jar fragment was in the temple. Even if Chu Fengmian did not want any of the treasures, he had to get the fragment. Moreover, he could not escape forever. Only by increasing his strength could he truly contend with the three major forces. If he continued to escape, there would be no peace. With the strength of the three of us, we are no match for the five elements Saber Saint even if we join forces. It is impossible to even contend with him. Emperor Yen pondered for a moment and said, I have seen records of the five elements Saber Saint in ancient books. It is said that when he was at the peak of the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu, he once fought against 5 9 tribulations Emperor Gu alone and was undefeated. Now that this person has stepped into the half-step celestial realm, his strength has increased greatly. If we fight him head-on, we will only die. We can't fight him head-on. As long as we enter the temple, it will not be so easy for the five elements Saber Saint to attack. Chu Fengmian also said. Chu Fengmian also guessed. With the five elements Saber Saint's identity, he would not come to kill Chu Fengmian alone. Chu Fengmian admitted that he did not have the ability to make a half-step celestial realm expert come to kill him. The five elements Saber Saint's real target should be the temple. The treasures in the Buddha's cave mansion were what the five elements Saber Saint wanted. The five elements Saber Saint was a half-step celestial realm expert. Now, his only goal was to break through to the celestial realm. There were many things in the ancient cave mansion that were of great use to him. Just like the bottle of martial ancestors' blood essence that Chu Fengmian had obtained in the lion tyrant martial ancestors' cave mansion, it contained the power of the celestial realm. For those half-step celestial realm experts who wanted to break through to the celestial realm, that bottle of martial ancestors' blood essence was definitely a treasure that they dreamed of. The five elements Saber Master most likely came for the treasures in the Buddhist temple. As for the sneak attack on Chu Fengmian, it was also a matter of convenience. As long as Chu Fengmian could escape the first sneak attack, the five elements Saber Saint would definitely snatch the treasure when Chu Fengmian rushed into the Buddhist temple. It was impossible for him to keep chasing Chu Fengmian. At that time, it would not be difficult for Chu Fengmian to escape. However, the most important thing was to escape this first sneak attack. When the temple opens, I'll go in alone first. You guys can go in later. Chu Fengmian pondered for a moment before speaking. Brother Chu, what are you doing? This is too dangerous. The Yan Emperor and Qing Meng's expressions changed when they heard Chu Fengmian's words. The moment such a large treasure trove was opened, countless experts would flock towards it. Countless experts wanted to seize the opportunity and enter it first. Whoever wanted to be the first to enter the cave would be besieged by everyone. Many of the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu had died under the bombardment of the crowd when they seized the opportunity. If Chu Fengmian rushed in, even if his strength was stronger than many of the Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu's, rushing in under the eyes of hundreds of Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu was almost like courting death. There was no need for hundreds of Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu to attack. 10% of them would be enough to blast Chu Fengmian into pieces. I'll die anyway. This is my last chance. Besides, I'm 50% sure that I can rush in. Chu Fengmian's eyes showed some determination. This plan was extremely risky, but it was the best plan Chu Fengmian could think of. Instead of waiting here for the Five Elements Saber Saint's sneak attack, it was better to seize the opportunity first. Chu Fengmian's physical body was tough, and the Divine Tree had undergone a transformation because of the Jianmu branch. It was not impossible for them to seize the opportunity and rush in first. The Five Elements Saber Saint's target is me. He shouldn't make things difficult for the two of you. If you encounter danger, you can go to the northern region. I've established a force in the northern region called the Swordway Sect. You can go there first, Chu Fengmian said to Qing Meng and Emperor Yan. Once this Buddhist temple was opened, no one knew the dangers inside. Under such chaos, perhaps even the Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu could not protect himself. If they encountered danger, as long as they hid in the Swordway Sect, the countless sword formations arranged by the Swordway Sect would be enough to ward off some danger. It's decided then. Chu Fengmian looked at Qing Meng and wanted to say something, but was interrupted by Chu Fengmian. Then, Chu Fengmian tore open the restriction around. Chu Fengmian looked around. There were many experts hiding in the surroundings. Of course, there were also many Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu who did not hide at all. They just stood there. This was the confidence of the Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. They were not afraid of anyone's schemes. There are more than 39 Tribulations Emperor Gu from the three major forces. Chu Fengmian took out the God-spying mirror and injected spiritual energy into it. He found that there were more than 39 Tribulations Emperor Gu from the three major forces within 100 miles. As for the other 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu who did not belong to the three major forces, there were even more. There were more than 109 Tribulations Emperor Gu gathered within 100 miles. In the Daluo star field, the scene of hundreds of Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu appearing at the same time had not been seen for tens of thousands of years. Today, in the Crimson Continent, experts were gathered. Of course, many of the Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu were not even martial artists from the Daluo star field, but experts from other star fields. The Emperor Jar, just as Chu Fengmian scanned the surrounding situation, the Emperor Jar in Chu Fengmian's body suddenly woke up and became restless. This restlessness proved that another fragment of the Emperor Jar had appeared nearby and was attracting Chu Fengmian's Emperor Jar. Chu Fengmian followed the restlessness of the Emperor Jar and looked over. Suddenly, he saw a group of martial artists gathered on another mountain peak. This group of martial artists wore clothes that were very similar. They were obviously from the same force. Among them, the leader was a young man with an arrogant face. It was the group of people from the Yan clan that Chu Fengmian had seen when he first arrived at the Crimson Continent. The leader was the young Master Jun of the Yan clan, Yan Jun. However, compared to the last time he saw them, there were more experts in this group of people from the Yan clan. There were 2 more elders standing behind Yan Junto to protect him. These 2 elders contained strong power of heaven and earth. When they spread out, they suppressed everything. These were the 2 Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. It was because of the aura of these 2 elders that the Yan clan occupied that mountain peak and no one dared to spy on them. Chapter 1585. The Yan clan was one of the 4 great clans in the Yanluo galaxy. They possessed terrifying strength and had 2 Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. Among the countless forces in the Crimson Continent, they were considered to be above average. On the mountain peak. When Chu Fengmian saw the people from the Yan clan, Yan Jun also looked in Chu Fengmian's direction. This person is here too. When Yan Jun looked at Chu Fengmian, murderous intent surged in his eyes. The last time they fought with Chu Fengmian, the Yan clan suffered a great loss. Even the God-spying mirror was taken away by Chu Fengmian. After suffering such a great loss, Yan Jun hated Chu Fengmian to the core. However, without the God-spying mirror, it was almost impossible for him to find Chu Fengmian. When Chu Fengmian landed on the mountain peak today, Yan Jun noticed Chu Fengmian's presence. "Young Master Jun, do you want us to kill him?" A few Yan clan disciples saw the murderous intent in Yan Jun's eyes and hurriedly asked. "Don't act rashly. This person is not easy to deal with." Yan Jun waved his hand and immediately spoke to the two Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu behind him. "Two Supreme Elders, are you a match for those two?" As Yan Jun spoke, he pointed at Emperor Yan and Qing Meng. With his strength, he could naturally see that Emperor Yan and Qing Meng were both Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. Two Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu and Chu Fengmian might not be weaker than the Yan clan. Because of this, Yan Jun did not dare to act rashly against Chu Fengmian. These two are not easy to deal with. The man is called Emperor Yan. He is considered an elite in the Daluo galaxy. However, he has just broken through. I alone am enough to deal with him. One of the old men glanced at the crowd and said. But that woman is not easy to deal with. She is a disciple of the Holy Dragon sect. Her strength is not inferior to the disciples of the Yanluo sect in the Yanluo galaxy. We can suppress and delay the two of them, but we can't spare time to help young master. Although the major galaxies were far apart, the Yan clan was still one of the major clans in the Yanluo galaxy. They still had some understanding of the elites in the Daluo galaxy. Chu Fengmian was just a newcomer, so they did not know much about him. However, the Yan Emperor and Qing Meng were both experts who had been famous for a long time. The two supreme elders of the Yan family naturally knew them. So, that boy is Sek's disciple? Yan Jun's Emperor Yan Jun's eyes flashed as if he was considering something. Observing Chu Fengmian's aura, he could tell that Chu Fengmian had made a breakthrough and officially stepped into the Emperor realm. Compared to the last time he fought with Yi Xuan's strength was probably many times more tyrannical. If the two Nine Tribulation ancient emperors of the Yan clan were unable to deal with Chu Fengmian, the remaining people might be able to suppress Chu Fengmian. However, if he wanted to kill Chu Fengmian, he would need another helper. Junqiao, the Mu family is here. At this moment, a Yan clan's disciple suddenly looked at the figures flying in the distance and suddenly spoke. More than a dozen escape lights flew towards the mountain where the Yan clan's members were. The leader was a young man who was about the same age as Yan Jun. Behind him, there was an elder who emitted the power of heaven and earth. He was also a Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. The Mu clan's escape lights flew over and all of them landed on the mountain where the Yan clan's members were. They seem to have joined forces. The Yan clan and the Mu clan have joined forces. The leader is the Mu clan's genius, Mu Jiao. The Yan clan and the Mu clan both belong to the Yanluo galaxy. They are also one of the four great clans of the Yanluo galaxy. It's normal for them to join forces. 3 Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. It seems that the Yan clan and the Mu clan have joined forces to come for the treasures in the Buddhist temple. Many cultivators began to discuss among themselves when they saw this scene. Once the Yan clan and the Mu clan joined forces, they would be an extremely strong force. 3 Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu and close to 10 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu. In the current Crimson Continent, they were already one of the strongest forces besides the Avalon of 5 elements, the Qilin Mountain, and the vast ocean in the Daluo galaxy. Brother Mu, please take a seat. When Yan Jun saw the Mu clan's arrival, a group of Yan clan's disciples made way for him. At the same time, a Yan clan's disciple took out a chair and placed it beside Yan Jun. The leader of the Mu clan did not stand on ceremony and directly sat on the chair. Brother Yan, it seems that it won't be easy to get the treasures in the Buddhist temple this time. The leader of the Mu clan, Mu Jiao, glanced at Yan Jun and said. Along the way, he also knew exactly how many experts had gathered in this Buddhist temple. There were hundreds of Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. The combined forces of the two clans only had 3 Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. once the Buddhist temple opened, it would be extremely dangerous for them to fight for the treasures. Although there are many experts, they do not belong to the same force. When the Buddhist temple opens, they will naturally fight for themselves. Yanjun glanced around and suddenly said with a change in expression. However, I want to deal with someone. I wonder if Brother Mu has any ideas? Brother Yan, who do you want to deal with? Hearing this, Mu Jiao asked curiously. At this time, the most important thing should be the treasures in the Buddhist temple. But from what Yanjun said, it seemed that he wanted to deal with someone. This made him very curious. I want to deal with this person. Yanjun stretched out his hand and pointed at Chu Fengmian. Mu Jiao's gaze followed the direction Yanjun was pointing at and his expression changed slightly. 29 Tribulations Emperor Gu? That person is Chu Fengmian of the Holy Dragon sect? Brother Yan, why do you want to deal with this person? Mu Jiao recognized Chu Fengmian's origin the moment he saw him. Although Chu Fengmian's reputation had not spread to the Yanluo galaxy, there were rumors about Chu Fengmian's strength in the Crimson Continent. This news was deliberately released by the three major forces. It was precisely because they wanted others to deal with Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian had the strength to contend with the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. Mu Jiao had also heard of the rumors about his fortuitous encounters. Mu Jiao wanted to obtain all the fortuitous encounters. When he looked at Chu Fengmian, his eyes were filled with greed. This person is not easy to deal with. However, Mu Jiao did not agree immediately. Chu Fengmian was simply a moving treasure. Every expert in the Crimson Continent knew this. But Chu Fengmian was still able to stand here. This also proved that it was not easy to deal with Chu Fengmian. Chapter 1586. Emperor Yan and Qing Meng were both 9 Tribulation ancient emperors, let alone Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian's strength was not inferior to the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. There were very few people who could deal with Chu Fengmian. In particular, Chu Fengmian's methods were ruthless. Rashly dealing with Chu Fengmian was akin to seeking death. With the strength of our two families, it won't be difficult to kill this person if we join forces. When Yanjun heard Mu Jiao's words, there was a hint of displeasure in his eyes. However, he did not turn hostile and continued to speak with a smile. Although this person is strong, he is not the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. As long as Elder Hai makes a move, it will be easy to kill this person. As for the 2 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu beside him, our Yan family can naturally deal with them. This Elder Hai was referring to the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu behind Mu Jiao. But this person is a powerhouse of the Holy Dragon sect. What about Yunzun? Mu Jiao's eyes revealed a hint of seriousness. Yunzun was not only a famous existence in the Daluo star field, but also in the Yanluo star field. If there was anyone in this era who was most likely to step into the celestial realm, that person's name would definitely be Yunzun. There were very few disciples in the Holy Dragon sect. Because of this, the Holy Dragon sect was famous for being protective. Whoever killed a disciple of the Holy Dragon sect would definitely be annihilated once Yunzun returned. Yunzun? He has long disappeared. Don't worry. What's more, the Holy Dragon sect can't even protect itself now. The 3 major forces of the Daluo star field have already attacked the Holy Dragon sect. When Yunzun returns, he will also fight to the death with the 3 major forces. Yanjun spoke indifferently. He glanced at Mu Jiao and then said, "Kill this person. Our Yan family will only take 30% of the opportunities and treasures on him. How about that? Are you serious?" Mu Jiao originally wanted to say a few more words, but when she heard this, her eyes suddenly lit up. Yanjun, don't lie. However, there is one thing. Our Yan family will take one of the things on this person first. Other than that, we will split it 370. Yanjun snorted coldly. He did not care much about the countless adventures that Chu Fengmian had. What he really cared about was the fragment of the Renhuang jar that Chu Fengmian had. The fragment of the supreme immortal weapon was what Yanjun wanted. In his body, the fragment of the jar of Runhuang was also trembling violently because of Chu Fengmian. This trembling proved that Chu Fengmian had more than one fragment of the Runhuang jar. He had to get it. Good. Old Hai, you can go and kill him. But now is not the time to do so. Wait until the temple opens and the situation becomes chaotic. Mu Jiao agreed, and Elder Hai behind him also nodded. Of course, they were willing to accept such a good deal. This man is Chu Fengmian? This person actually has countless treasures on him. When this person was still a quasi-emperor, he was already able to contend against an 8 tribulation emperor Gu. Now that he has stepped into the emperor realm, he is already a 9 tribulation emperor Gu. This kind of strength is simply shocking. I wonder how many fortuitous encounters he had. Killing him and obtaining his empty ring is no less than obtaining a huge treasure. We'll find an opportunity to kill him. On the mountain peak, Chu Fengmian stood there and could see the murderous gazes looking at him. These 9 tribulation emperor Gu did not hide their gazes when they looked at Chu Fengmian. Among the emperor Gu present, at least a dozen of them had murderous intentions towards Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian's strength was simply too terrifying. It was simply beyond the scope of a genius. There was no other explanation except that Chu Fengmian had a shocking opportunity. This was also the fundamental reason why countless people wanted to kill Chu Fengmian. It seems that Brother Chu is in a lot of trouble. The Yan Emperor also noticed this and whispered to Chu Fengmian. Do you need me to help you stop a few people later? A bunch of chickens and pottery dogs. They are not worth mentioning. I alone am enough to deal with them. When the temple opens, there will be no shortage of treasures inside. You and senior sister should seize the opportunity to collect the treasures inside. As for those people, they don't have the ability to kill me. Chu Fengmian said proudly. The 9 tribulation emperor Gu wanted to kill Chu Fengmian. In a one-on-one battle, Chu Fengmian could kill Emperor Gu. The biggest threat to Chu Fengmian was the 5-element saber saint, a half-step celestial being expert. As for the others, Chu Fengmian did not care. Moreover, as long as Chu Fengmian rushed into the temple, it would not be easy for anyone to deal with Chu Fengmian in the chaos. Hearing Chu Fengmian's confident words, Emperor Yan did not say anything. Based on his understanding of Chu Fengmian was naturally not the kind of person who would brag and speak without thinking. Since Chu Fengmian was confident, he also believed that Chu Fengmian could deal with it. And indeed, the biggest threat to Chu Fengmian was the 5-element saber saint. Even if Emperor Yan and Qing Meng worked together, they would not be able to help Chu Fengmian. Yan Jun, Chu Fengmian also looked at Yan Jun. His eyes were also surging with murderous intent. Among all the people present, the person Chu Fengmian wanted to kill the most, and also the person he had to kill, was Yan Jun. Chu Fengmian had to get the fragment of the Emperor Jar in Yan Jun's hands. In the Crimson Continent, it was the best opportunity to kill Yan Jun otherwise, once Yan Jun left the 9 domains and returned to the Yanluo starfield. It would be much more difficult for Chu Fengmian to kill Yan Jun. After all, the Yanluo starfield was very far away from the Daluotian starfield. It would take a long time to cross the starry sky. Moreover, the Yanluo starfield was the Yan clan's lair. Unless Chu Fengmian's true strength was comparable to a half-step celestial being, it was almost impossible to go to the Yan clan's lair and kill Yan Jun, enter the temple and kill him. Chu Fengmian quietly erased all the aura in the God-spying mirror, leaving only Yan Jun's aura. When he arrived at the temple, Chu Fengmian would look for an opportunity to kill Yan Jun. Time passed by minute by minute. More and more experts gathered around the temple, but it was incomparably calm. In the Crimson Continent, there was a rare period of peace. In the temple, there was not a single battle. Even enemies had put aside their grievances. All the experts were accumulating their strength, waiting for the moment the temple opened so that they could rush into the temple to snatch the treasure. No one was willing to waste their strength in a useless fight at this time. Above the temple, the runes on the temple had become brighter, and the 7-colored light that soared into the sky became more and more brilliant. Countless people perked up. The Buddhist temple was about to open. Chu Fengmian's spiritual consciousness was observing every movement around the temple. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian sensed a fluctuation of spiritual power in the sky. Chapter 1587. This wave of spiritual energy was so weak that it did not attract anyone's attention. Only Chu Fengmian was observing his surroundings to prevent the Five Elements Saber Saint from suddenly attacking. The Princess of the Sea had told Chu Fengmian that the Five Elements Saber Saint would attack him the moment the temple opened. However, Chu Fengmian did not dare to let down his guard. His spiritual senses were activated to the extreme as he observed his surroundings. Although this wave of spiritual energy disappeared in an instant, Chu Fengmian was sharp enough to capture it. This wave of spiritual energy was not far from Chu Fengmian. At a glance, there was only the sky. Even if Chu Fengmian used his spiritual senses to explore, he could not detect anything strange. However, the appearance of the spiritual energy wave just now was not ordinary. Chu Fengmian's intuition could not be wrong. God spying mirror. Chu Fengmian's expression did not change. However, he quietly activated the power of the God-spying mirror and injected the wave of spiritual energy that he had just sensed into it. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian saw a figure in the empty sky at the place where the spirit force fluctuations were just now. This figure contained an extremely terrifying power. The power contained in this figure was the power of heaven and earth. It was much stronger than any venerable warrior that Chu Fengmian had ever seen. Half-step to the celestial realm. This is definitely a half-step to the celestial realm. This person's cultivation technique is very similar to the Five Elements Saber Master. Is this the Five Elements Saber Saint? Chu Fengmian observed carefully and found that this was a middle-aged man with white hair. He looked younger than the Five Elements Saber Master. However, Chu Fengmian knew that it was almost impossible to distinguish a warrior's age by his appearance. For example, a half-step to the celestial realm expert's lifespan was several times longer than that of the Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. Therefore, even if this Five Elements Saber Saint was older than the Five Elements Saber Master, he looked much younger. A half-step to the celestial realm expert was now a few miles away from Chu Fengmian. Now, this person's gaze was fixed on Chu Fengmian. Even if Chu Fengmian was already mentally prepared, he was still shocked when he saw the Five Elements Saber Saint. The Five Elements Saber Sage did his best to remain calm and collected as if he had not discovered the Five Elements Saber Sage. Fortunately, Chu Fengmian had lived 2 lifetimes and had a firm Tao heart. If it had been any other Emperor Gu of the Nine Tribulations, it would have been hard for him not to be exposed. The Five Elements Saber Saint had already arrived at Chu Fengmian's side before the Buddhist temple opened. He was waiting for an opportunity to kill Chu Fengmian with one strike. The information that the Princess of the Sea had given Chu Fengmian was indeed accurate. If the Princess of the Sea had not told Chu Fengmian about the Five Elements Saber Saint, Chu Fengmian would not have been able to detect that the Five Elements Saber Saint had already sneaked up on him. After all, the Five Elements Saber Saint's figure was hidden. Even Chu Fengmian's spiritual sense could not detect him. Chu Fengmian had only just captured a wisp of the Five Elements Saber Saint's aura when his spiritual sense was fully activated. With the help of the God-prying mirror, Shaochen barely managed to discover the Five Elements Saber Sage. He's still waiting. The Five Elements Saber Saint should be waiting for the Buddhist temple to open. Chu Fengmian observed the Five Elements Saber Saint. Now, the Five Elements Saber Saint had completely hidden his aura and figure. He should be waiting for the Buddhist temple to open so that he could attack and kill Chu Fengmian. When the Buddhist temple opened, it would attract everyone's attention. Chu Fengmian was no exception. When the time came, a sneak attack on Chu Fengmian would be the most fatal. The Five Elements Saber Saint had made such a choice because he really wanted to kill Chu Fengmian with one strike. Boom, boom, boom. At this moment, a series of booming sounds came from the ancient Buddhist temple. The ancient runes on the Buddhist temple had already begun to condense. The 7-colored light had also reached its peak. The dazzling light could be seen clearly from thousands of miles away. Countless experts present were tense at this moment. This was a sign that the treasure was about to open. The Buddhist temple was also about to open. In this ancient Buddhist temple, rays of light seemed to be unable to be suppressed and suddenly burst out. Is that the Thousand Thoughts Buddhist beads? The legendary spiritual weapon of the Thousand Thoughts Buddha. A warrior stared at one of the rays of light and shouted in disbelief when he saw a Buddhist bead in the light screen. Countless people could feel the power of the Thousand Thoughts Buddhist beads in the light. It definitely contained an earth-shattering power. The martialist who shouted was wearing a kasaya. He was a Buddha from the Pure Land Star field. When he saw the Buddhist beads, he could not help but shout. Thousand Thoughts Buddha was once an expert of the Pure Land sect. It was said that he had already stepped into the half-step celestial realm and was only a step away from the celestial realm. The most powerful spiritual weapon of the Thousand Thoughts Buddha was a Buddhist bead. The Thousand Thoughts Buddhist beads disappeared along with the Thousand Thoughts Buddha. Who would have thought that it would appear once again in this Buddhist temple? The Thousand Thoughts Buddhist beads is the most precious treasure of our Buddhism. We must get it. Several experts of the Pure Land sect said. Chapter 1588. Among them, the six-winged centipede was a kind of natural variant. It was a rare and unique creature with an extremely strong physical body. It was said that the six-winged centipede could tear the space apart with brute force. Even the Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu, or a half-step celestial being, would not be able to escape from the six-winged centipede. The slightest carelessness would cause the six-winged centipede to drill a hole in the body. In this small body, there was an extremely strong physical body. In ancient times, the six-winged centipede was a supreme treasure that countless experts of the body-refining path dreamed of. The six-winged holy body elixir refined from the body of the six-winged centipede was one of the best body-refining elixirs. Experts who wanted to reach the pinnacle of body-refining path needed the elixir without exception. The Tibetan gold essence was transformed from the thick earth essence. Once refined, it could condense the power of the physical body and transform the physical body. The six-winged holy body elixir was purely used to enhance the physical body, while the Tibetan gold essence could not only enhance the physical body, but also enhance the spiritual meridians, making them thicker and stronger. These two supreme treasures were famous in ancient times. Only experts of the celestial being realm had the opportunity to obtain them. People below the celestial being realm were not qualified to obtain these two supreme treasures. Chu Fengmian saw these two supreme treasures in the light of the opening of the Buddhist temple. These two supreme treasures were enough to strengthen Chu Fengmian's body. It would be of great help to condense the true immortal real body. Of course, there were many other treasures that were of great use to Chu Fengmian. However, the most valuable ones were the six-winged centipede and the Tibetan gold essence. If it's the Buddha's cave mansion, it's not unbelievable that there are such treasures. Chu Fengmian was not surprised. The Buddha was a figure who was on the same level as the immortal emperor. In any era, he was a supreme expert. At most, there were people who were on the same level as him, but no one could surpass him. After the fall of the Buddha, the things left behind were absolute supreme treasures. When they saw the countless treasure lights, the countless experts at the scene became even crazier. Some of them were even itching to give it a try, wanting to rush in. However, as one of the ancient emperors rushed in recklessly, he was instantly killed by the seals above the temple. Only then did the martial artists finally calm down. The light of the treasures was illusory. Before the temple opened, no one could set foot inside. But the temple was about to open. The light of the treasures, when the last light disappeared, an ancient voice resounded. Chu Fengmian couldn't understand the voice, but he could tell that it was Sanskrit, the most ancient language of Buddhism. The temple's Buddha's Buddha. The doors of the ancient Buddhist temple opened with a bang, revealing countless precious treasures within. Through the light of the light holy body. Go! The treasures in this temple are mine. Heaven earth. reverse formation, 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 formation. Boom! Countless figures rushed toward the temple's door at the same time. At this time, whoever stepped into the temple first would have the upper hand and the best chance to obtain the treasures. Among the Buddha's supreme treasures, the worst were the spiritual weapons of the half-step celestial realm. Many of them were even spiritual weapons of the celestial realm experts. Obtaining one of them was enough to make a Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu soar and increase his strength. The scene was crazy. The Avalon of 5 elements, vast ocean, and Chilan Mountain had the most Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. The moment the temple opened, they immediately joined forces to set up an ancient formation that shrouded the entrance of the temple. Any expert who approached the entrance of the Buddhist temple would be attacked by the ancient array. These 3 factions planned on keeping all the martial artists outside and devouring all the treasures in this Buddhist temple for themselves. Damn it! These 3 forces intend to take it all for themselves. Break this formation and rush in. Countless ancient emperors saw that the entrance to the Buddhist temple had been destroyed. Every one of them went berserk and attacked the spirit design that the 3 major powers had set up together. A Nine Tribulation ancient emperor might not be worth mentioning in front of the 3 top forces. However, the number of Nine Tribulation ancient emperors from the other forces was twice the number of Nine Tribulation ancient emperors from the 3 top forces. The actions of the 3 forces had undoubtedly provoked a public anger. No matter which side the experts belonged to, they were unwilling to let the 3 forces monopolize the treasures in the temple. Countless Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu joined forces to attack the yin-yang reversal formation. Although these Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu had joined forces, they were not united. Their goal was the treasures in the temple, not a true alliance. Although there were many people attacking, no one was willing to use their full strength, so they could not break the yin-yang reversal formation immediately. The scene was chaotic. Amidst the chaos, a saber light suddenly slashed down from the sky. This saber light was like a slash from heaven and earth. It fell silently from the sky, and there was even a hint of gray fog in this light. The aura of chaos. The power of this saber had touched upon the chaos. The 5 elements were separated from the chaos. The ultimate of the Avalon of 5 elements was to return to the chaos. Although the 5 elements saber Grandmaster's 5 elements divine saber was mysterious, it was far from reaching this level. However, this saber light had touched upon the chaos. The saber slashed down so fast that no one could react. The 5 elements saber saint, who had been lurking nearby and watching Chu Fengmian, finally made his move. Amidst the chaos, Chu Fengmian could not even take care of himself. The saber went straight for Chu Fengmian's heart. Tyrannical power was contained in the blade as it slashed towards Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian's figure seemed to be standing there without any reaction. The old man who made the move sneered. At this moment, the saber slashed Chu Fengmian's body. However, the old man's face suddenly froze. There was no blood when the saber slashed. What was slashed was only a shadow. He dodged it. The old man's voice was extremely shocked, but there was also endless anger in it. The 5 elements saber saint was a half-step celestial realm expert. He had been famous for a long time and had a prominent status. He was an ancestor-like existence in the Avalon of 5 elements. He attacked a junior like Chu Fengmian with a sneak attack. It was already despicable. Now, Chu Fengmian actually dodged it. To him, it was a disgrace. Where did he escape to? You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.